Welcome to episode 124 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the big moves and attitudes edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm here with my co-host Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, Phil. We had a lot of things happening this past weekend here in the world of motorsports in both NASCAR and IndyCar. A lot of movement and a lot of things that happened. But, we've got two special guests here, one recurring and very special guest here. So I'll let you introduce them here.
Yes, we have our usual recurring guest, our great contributor to the GSP, fellow Jersey guy, writer for Fansided, and his name is Joe Passero. What's going on, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm looking forward. I'm going to Pocono this week, so I'm excited and a lot to talk about. I don't know who decided Tuesday would be a great day to blow up motorsports, but it's actually been a lot of fun getting to watch and think about everything that's happening. So I'm excited to get to talk about that with you guys, and we're gonna have a good time tonight.
Yeah, and the special guest, the special guest, is somebody that I've already apologized for my fanboying out a few minutes ago. Somebody I've looked up to, somebody I've watched from the moment I started watching racing. So I'm making myself older. The difference is he doesn't look older, which is part of what makes it funny. We talked about it, Josh and I talked about it with Derek Pernasiglio when we had him on the show, and he got a laugh out of it and agreed in regards to your hair. But a man that has covered all kinds of motorsports, 2 and 4 wheels, covered every type of racing series you can imagine, was the lead announcer during one of my favorite races in my fandom for Josh and Joe. It was the 2009 Coke Zero 400. Again, you can think of why it was one of my favorites. He's friends with the guy that won that race. That's the race where Kyle Petty said that's incredible about 18,000 times, and that became one of his call catchphrases or whatever. A dude that's one of the only people that can say he had a promo done on him while sitting next to the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, a guy who has interviewed all the legends of motorsports and owns an entity that was developed by the Dean of American Motorsports Writing. His name is Ralph Sheheen. Thank you so much for coming on to the Grip Strip Podcast. And I'm glad I was able to find something that you're going to be able to use on one of my heroes. And I mean, you are one of my heroes too, but one of my motorsports heroes. And I want the video of that on your Instagram when you do embarrass Tony about that.
Well, thank you, Phil. I appreciate you guys having me on. This is going to be a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to it.
So I guess we can start with this. Right now, you're covering American Flat Track, which the AMA series, it seems like there's a lot of positive growth going on right now, not only with your buddy Wayne Rainey, the great legendary 3-time Grand Prix motorcycle champion Wayne Rainey with Moto America, with their connection with the super bikes and all that, but with the flat track class, both with the twins and the singles, there seems to be very healthy fields, good racing in both classes, and a lot of fans, a lot of fan engagement too. And TV coverage seems to be going well because you're involved in it. And I don't think you'd be involved in it if it wasn't good. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days.
It's going really well over there at the Progressive American Flat Track Championship. It's been around for decades. It's gone through a lot of variations. The current series, known as American Flat Track, crisscrosses the country, California to Pennsylvania this past weekend, Florida to New York. We go all over the place. There's a variety of racetracks. They run half miles. The miles are what they're most known for. We run short tracks like we just did up at Laconia, up at Loudon a few weeks back. And of course, TTs, where it has a little bit of a jump involved. We'll have 2 of those this year. Legendary Peoria TT coming up in 2 weeks will be our first one. We go up to Castle Rock out in Washington State later in August. All the series airs on FS1, so we have really good TV with folks at Fox. And the numbers have been very strong. You're right. Big crowds in the grandstands and good TV numbers. It's the makings of a solid series.
And it's with you. I know that it's funny. There's so many connections going on with this episode. with how with this all intertwines. I connect Pocono because many years ago, 9 years ago, you gave me 5 minutes of your time while you were working for TNT as part of their NASCAR coverage when they had that summer series.
Yeah.
And you had covered the summer series, of course. As I mentioned, you were the lead announcer of that Daytona race, but you'd been doing the pit road work as well with another one of Tony's good buddies, Matt Yoakum, and others, Lindsay Zarniak. There's so many connections. It's crazy. I guess it's just the way life works. But I think in that 5-minute conversation, we talked about NASCAR, open wheel, MotoGP, and we ended talking about Valentino Rossi. And so it shows how your depth and breadth of motorsports covers everything. And I know motorcycles have always been a big part. I mean, you and Scott Russell would call races. You've been covering the dirt. It doesn't matter. As long as Supercross with you and Jeff Emig and then Ricky. I mean, I guess the motorcycles are always calling your name. And then whether it's those guys or some of the other guys that used to ride them, it always seems to come back to that, right?
I just love racing. I love it all. I find every form of motorsport interesting because racers are the same. Racers are all racers. When you spend time talking to Valet and then you spend time talking to Tony Stewart, they're exactly the same mindset. And that's really interesting. And I love watching a good race, right? I don't care what you're running. You could be racing bar stools and I'm interested. If guys are going after it and it's too wide coming to the checkers, I'm interested. So the technical side of motorsports is intriguing, but I'm not the guy you want building your race car for you. I'll be honest. But I do find it interesting. But it's the human interest side of the sport that I'm really intrigued by, that I really like. What makes these guys tick, what drives them to risk everything to get the win, all of that sort of stuff. So I've been very fortunate that motorcycle racing has always been a part of my career. It was actually the first thing I ever announced when I was in college at Chico State out in California. And I got the opportunity to announce what was known as AFM, the American Federation of Motorcyclists, which is an amateur motorcycle road racing series that was competing at what is now known as Sonoma Raceway. I was just a college student and got paid absolutely nothing to go announce their races, but it was a great experience. And that's what you need. You need those laps on the microphone, if you will. So motorcycle racing has always been there and always been a part of my career. The racing is always great, whether it's road racing, flat track, moto, it's always good competition. Supercross was fantastic. We dropped the gate every Saturday night and you had no idea what was going to happen. No clue. And I love that. It was always great. Exciting, got you up out of your seat. And that's the kind of racing I love to announce. People always will say to me, man, we love your enthusiasm for that. Well, it was very natural. You can't fake that. I mean, you can try, but what you hear out of me is really the enthusiasm I have at the moment. You talked about 09 at Daytona with Smoke and Kyle Busch coming to the checkers. And what a crazy finish that was. All that energy you heard out of me was for real. I mean, how could you not be excited at that? It was tremendous, So that's what I love about racing. Look, this is some of the most exciting stuff happening in the world of sports each and every week. Somewhere there's a great finish. I just hope I'm the one who's calling that particular race. And I've had some doozies over the years. I mean, MotoGP, I was just thinking about that. You brought that up with Valet. I had Valet and Marc Marquez coming down through the corkscrew and Valet going off the side of the corkscrew to pass Marquez for the win. Tremendous show. I mean, there's been some great ones.
Didn't he also do that against Casey Stoner?
Well, Stoner did it to him.
Oh, okay.
And he learned, and he used it on Mark.
Well, I think they all learned it from Alex Zanardi. So once he did that to Brian Herta, which also connects to this weekend too, since his son was qualified on pole and finished second.
It's just a little sketchier trying to do it in the dirt on two wheels than four,
Just a bit. And because they've changed the curbing, I think, a little bit at the corkscrew.
Yeah, well, how it is. You give racers an inch, they'll take a mile.
Absolutely.
We had that this weekend at Port Royal with flat track. The guys were coming so far up off of four up to the wall. They were just about scraping the edge of the handlebars there. The track officials, they lined the walls with hay bales and air fencing for flat track. They don't have safer barriers. They actually had to turn the hay bales sideways to give them a little bit more room so they get a little closer to the wall. They were getting so far up there.
So they were running the cushion up that high. That's crazy.
Oh, they had it right there.
Well, that's a whole different level. I can't wait to watch it on FS1.
Yep, this
But,
weekend.
I will throw it to my panel. Like Josh, you open it up first, and then Joe, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, so Ralph, back in 2012, I'm connecting it back to Pocono at the Pocono 400. You interviewed Dale Earnhardt Jr. post race, and he had a bit of a awkward interview there. I don't know if you remember. He kind of started to give you an answer, and then kind of paused for a minute, and then he asked, "Can you start over?" And then it was all caught live on tape post race. I don't know if you remember that one, but just wanted to know if you had anything to recall from that particular day. Because I mean, for me as a junior fan, that's like one of the more unique moments, I guess, that I've seen in his career, and it's kind of like a niche thing that happened, back then.
Yeah, I'd like to think Dale and I have a good relationship. I had a great relationship with his dad, which I cherish, and a lot of special moments with him. But I do remember that. And I think the fact that Dale stopped and said, "Hey, can you ask me that question again?" tells me and told me then that he felt comfortable enough with me that he knew I wouldn't hang him out and make him look silly. And I get it. Look, these guys are racing, especially at Pocono, 200 miles an hour. You're hot, you're tired, your brain has been worn out mentally trying to focus on what you're doing. I'm not surprised that a guy every now and then gets lost in an interview or forgets what he was trying to say. And what that tells me about Junior is that he wanted to give a good answer. So he wanted to make sure he told me and his fans what he was really thinking, and he wanted to make sure he answered the question. So I appreciate him at that point saying, "Hey, I don't want to not give you a good answer. Just could you ask me that again so I get my thoughts together after I've been out here doing what we've been doing all day for a Pocono 5 hours," or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting interview. And I remember the post, I guess, yeah, after that incident, you had that video with Mike Davis on JRM 360. And I watched that video the other day when Phil told me that you were going to be on. So I had to remember all the details and everything from that. But it was one of the more interesting pieces of interviews that I've ever seen. But, also you had that interview with Lewis Hamilton with Tony Stewart back in 2011 when, they had the F1
One of
test.
my favorite things when they did the swap. I
Yeah,
wanted
that's
to go
true.
to that,
The
but I
seat
thought
swap.
it was going to be snowing or raining, and it basically did. So I ended up sitting there. It was bad, but I watched it, and I was wishing I was there. Two of my favorite racing drivers, and Bob Varsha and Steve Matchett and Larry McReynolds in the booth, and Ralph, you were down there with them.
Yeah, I actually did both of those. I did the first one at Indianapolis, which was
With
Juan Pablo
yeah, and
Montoya,
Jeff Gordon.
which was a lot of fun. We had the same crew that you just talked about, Larry and Bob and Steve, and then me down there with the guys. And then we went to Watkins Glen. I guess it was the very next year, and we did
2012.
Tony.
2012.
2011.
Yeah.
Or left before Tony won the. No, I thought Tony had won the championship. And
No, this was in the middle of his championship run before.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, you had Lewis and Tony there, but do you think with you being friends with Tony, you think you can convince Tony to give Lewis a call to invite him next year for the SRX series if they have it?
I that would be really exciting. I'm looking forward to something like Kimi Räikkönen is going to be getting in the Cup car here soon, right? I think it would be great. And I'll tell you the thing I got out of Lewis that day was that he's very open to that kind of stuff if it fits into his schedule. Now, I'm not so sure Toto Wolff is going to let him go do that, but I think there could be a time down the road where Lewis might want to do that. I really liked Lewis. I got to know him a little bit that day, and I thought he was a really good guy. He was very open, very friendly, very willing to talk. I mean, of course, I was the only media guy really there bothering him that day. So he wasn't afraid to chat, but he was very open and very willing to get into it and have a good time with it. And he was really excited about driving that Cup car that day.
Yeah, it's definitely a great experience to be able to have that. So, Joe, I'll throw to you if you have any questions for Ralph here.
Yeah, sure. So I was having technical issues before. So hi, Ralph. It's great to have you so much. So as a fresh college graduate, you had just spoken a little bit about what you were doing in college. What is advice that you would give? And this is a question that I ask to everybody I meet in media, in racing. I've asked Matt Dillner this. I have asked Caitlin Vincey this. One piece of advice you would give to somebody who maybe is in college, just getting out of college and looking to make their way it doesn't necessarily have to be in motorsports media, but in media in general, what can they do?
Yeah, I would tell you the same thing I tell everybody who comes up and asks, and I get asked that a lot. It's usually the question you get, and I understand why. And I've asked the exact same question. Experience, experience, experience. Whatever you got to do to get it, however you get it. And volunteering to do those races is a perfect example. I had to get up at 4 in the morning and drive from Chico 4 hours to Sonoma every week when we had those races to announce all day from 8 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night for nothing but a box lunch, and then 4 hours back to go to school the next day. And I did that for a long time. Eventually I got paid $25 to do that, and I thought I was really killing it. I can't tell you how many things I did for free or for basically no money to get that experience. That experience means everything. If you can get paid, fantastic. But I'll tell you, eventually I got to a point where I was doing speedway motorcycles on Friday night in Auburn, California. I grew up and lived in Sacramento. After college, I went back to Sac. Friday night was speedway motorcycles in Auburn, California, Gold Country Fairgrounds. Saturday night was NASCAR weekly racing series at All American Raceway, which now Bill McAnally owns. Back then, Bill was just a street stock driver. Sunday was whatever was going on in the area. It might have been something at Sonoma or Laguna Seca or the Hangtown Motocross, whatever I get my hands on. Then Monday nights, I was announcing ladies' fashion shows at a restaurant bar. And you might say, well, why were you doing that? Well, because it was experience on a microphone, and I had no idea what I was doing because I didn't know anything about ladies' fashion, but it was a paid gig. It was experience on a microphone. And what it taught me, most importantly, was how to get through situations when I had nothing to talk about. Now, if you think about it, that's really important. You said you're going to Pocono this weekend. Well, what if you were announcing the race there and somebody knocks the wall down in turn one, or the catch fence comes apart and they're going to be down for an hour or two? Well, you hope the producer has a bunch of feature pieces lined up, but eventually he runs out of all that stuff. Now, what are you going to do? You're running the show, you're hosting the show. You got to keep that thing interesting, and you got to fill time for who knows how long. I can't tell you how many times I've had to deal with that. So that's what I learned by hosting those fashion shows. How do you keep that show moving in front of a live audience? And yeah, I had to sell the dresses and make that happen, but I still had to keep the event going and make it interesting. That was experience that has paid off. I can't tell you how many times over the years, but all of that experience eventually helped me get my first TV gig on ESPN, which leads to another one and to another one and to another one, and to eventually where I'm sitting here today telling you, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I've been on national TV now for 34 years, which is unbelievable to say out loud, because when I was starting, I would have been thrilled if I'd have done it one time, let alone 1 year. And here I've done it now, thank God, 34 years. And I hope there's another 34. So go get experience. And go get experience. If you want to do racing, go do a volleyball match, go do a soccer match, because you're not going to know how to do that. And you're going to have to figure out how to make that interesting. And you're going to learn from that.
And so another question. So in regards to racing in general and your experience, you have, I think we've covered it pretty well already. You've got a lot of diversity in the different forms of racing that you cover, that you follow. Is there any particular form of racing you have not yet covered, whether it be on TV and writing, that you want to cover, something you would try that's brand new?
I've done every form of racing out there. So there's not a form of racing I've missed that I'd like to do. I've done everything from swamp buggies to Formula One in Monaco. So I literally have done every form that there is. The one event I have not done that I would like to do is the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I've done all the other super huge events like Daytona 500, Indy 500, U.S. Nationals at Indianapolis, Supercross in Anaheim, Knoxville Nationals. I've done all the big ones, Sebring, Daytona 24, done all that. I've not been to Le Mans. I'd like to go see Le Mans and be a part of that. I think that'd be pretty special.
You've done sport cars, though, right? You've done sports car racing.
IMSA and American Le Mans Series and SCCA Trans Am races all over the place. And yeah, I've done all kinds of sports car races. Like I said, I've done basically the entire IMSA calendar: Daytona, Sebring, Monterey, Sonoma, you name Watkins Glen, Salem, 6 hours. I've done all the big ones over here. I just haven't been overseas to do Le Mans. I'd like to go to Le Mans. Looks like a special place. It's got that same vibe as an Indianapolis and a Daytona, and I'd like to take that in person. And then after that, there's some F1 venues I'd like to get to, some MotoGP places. Look, there's still dirt tracks over here I'd like to go to that I haven't been to yet.
Like,
Let's see. I'd like to go to. I just had a great time at Port Royal, but it was there for the bikes. I'd love to go back to Port Royal and see sprint cars run there. I'd love to go to Oswego for Super Dirt Week. I would like to see that. I'd like to do some of the other central Pennsylvania tracks I haven't been to, like Selinsgrove, and where else haven't I been to? Selinsgrove, been to Lincoln.
You've done Williams Grove, though.
I've been to Williams Grove. Haven't been to Selinsgrove. What am I missing? Port Royal I've been to.
So essentially, the Pennsylvania month of whatever the Pennsylvania month of speed, Pennsylvania Speed Week. That was and that's great racing, and that actually
I haven't been to Huset's. I'd like to go to Huset's. I haven't been there.
Huset's, yeah. You've been to I-55 because your buddies would trade it. Oh, you have? Okay, there you go. So I thought you had been, yeah.
I'd like to get to Peevely. Haven't been.
So now Schrader's holding out on you too now. So now we figured out your buddy Smoke is holding out on you, and your buddy Schrader's holding out on you.
Well,
but Schrader's memory isn't so good anymore, but he still got it behind the wheel.
No,
so you can't.
Schrader's been pretty good. In fact, Schrader, when he just moved back home to St. Louis not too long ago, he had me come over to his race shop, and he gave me every issue of National Speed Sport News that he had saved. He gave me boxes of them. So Schrader's good. He'd invite me to Peevely. It's just making it fit on the calendar.
Because you're that busy, and so is he. Because that tells you how busy he still is. That was one of the best things about last weekend's race in the SRX with them racing there was seeing Kenny on national TV again like he used to be for so many years and being as competitive as he was.
Right?
Yeah, and he did. He put on a show. It was out there in 100 freaking degree weather, and he was one of the guys I was able to hold up. Well, it kind of makes sense when you were driving stock cars in the 1980s with no AC, and you're Kenny Schrader, but then Kenny Schrader's got them stories too, right? I'm sure you have a Kenny Schrader story or two.
Oh, Schrader's one of the greats. I think the Schrader story I love is I wasn't a part of the broadcast, but I just remember watching it. He was at Martinsville, and it was a cup race on ESPN, and he was running the Budweiser car for Mr. H, and all the fire extinguishers went off in the car, and the car filled up with halon, and he had to pull into the infield, and whoever the pit reporter was ran up to the car, and he crawls out with all the smoke coming out of the car, and the guy says, Kenny, how was it in there with all that fire extinguisher stuff going off? And he goes, man, it was like drinking a 6-pack of Budweiser all at once. It's just crazy. I got kind of lightheaded. I was thinking, that's fantastic. It's funny. He got the sponsor plug in there. It's creative. That's Schrader.
It would have been tougher if he was still with Kodiak, though. If he couldn't have came up with one, or AC Delco, he wouldn't have been able to come up with something unless, they wouldn't have been able to come up with anything. But it shows how great Kenny Schrader is, though. I mean, in regards to what you're doing now and all the different people you've met, I mean, it's just crazy. I always remember the first thing I remember you said this, and I guess I'm going back to that 34 years national TV, and I get to age myself now and not feel as bad. It's been 30 years for me as a racing fan. And the first thing I remember you on was the ASA. And then, so there's all the great nicknames. You've been in the ASA with the Polar Bear and the Bluebird and all those, and John Bent. It's like I hear Larry Newber, like I hear your voice. They'd throw to you. It was Larry Newber and Rob Albright throwing to you on pit road, and you'd be interviewing, Mike Eddy or Bob Seneca or insert great driver, legendary driver here, or John Benson Jr. as that's which I love. I mean, Larry Newber is a legend. God bless him. Like certain references, certain emphasis, like how he emphasized, Bill Elliott's win at Darlington and Johnny Benson Jr.'s name. Those things connect. I mean, and then you've been able to do drag racing with the great Steve Evans and Dave McClelland and Bob Fart. I mean, all the and you got to work with the great Ken. You've worked, like, that's the thing. You were grinding in California, and you were grinding in college so that you could work with all these legends of motorsports. And in the end, you're responsible for this entity that the great Chris Economaki came up with, which is Speed Sport News. I guess I mean, coming back to it all, I went so many places. Like what prompted you to go and, or what made you buy this so that we still have it? Because if we had lost Speed Sport News, I think we would. I mean, it is an encyclopedia of motorsports. It's something. I mean, Schrader gave you all those issues. It's something that has gone on for decades.
Well, that's exactly why we had to save it. My partner Joe Tripp and I, we all grew up reading it, because there was no internet, and the only way that you could find out who was winning or what news was happening was by waiting for your mailbox to have a Speed Sport sitting in it come Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, whenever you got your issue. And this here, I'll show you. That's actually the very first issue from 1934, right there. That's how it started. It was called the National Auto Racing News, and it was an insert in a newspaper in New Jersey. So Chris didn't actually start it. Guys in a newspaper department in New Jersey did. They thought, hey, there's all this racing going on. Let's start writing about it and see what happens. So they did those 6 pages inside the paper that one day, and it took off. And then it developed into National Speed Sport News. And Chris was selling it in the grandstands when he was a kid. Then he started writing for it. And eventually he bought it and took it over. And when he took it over, he took it into what became the Bible of American motorsports. Everybody had to have it and everybody read it. And the first thing you had to do is read Chris's column, because that's where all the best news was. Because there was no other way to break a story but then to call Chris and give him the tip, or him to call you, find out what it was, and then he'd write about it and everybody would know it come the next weekend. So Chris and I had become friends. He was like a mentor. He was a colleague. The very first race I ever did on TV in 1988, which was the IMSA finale for Camel GT in Del Mar, California, Chris was my colleague on pit road on that show. So I'd known Chris for a long time. I'd actually written some stories for him and so forth in Speed Sport. And when he passed, the family didn't want to do it anymore because it was really his thing. And Corinne was ready to move on to other stuff with her life. So she was looking for somebody to take it over who could be shepherded into another era. So she knew Joe and I and felt very comfortable with us. And she gave us the opportunity to buy the brand. And that's what we did. We bought the logo, that red square. We didn't buy all their assets or debts. We just got the square, and it was up to us to figure out what to do with it. And we turned it into a media company right away because the paper was not working anymore. So now we do 2 magazines, Speed Sport and Sprint Car Midget, 2 websites, all the TV shows. We're on every Thursday night on MAV TV. We've got our over-the-top television network, speedsport.com, Speed Sport TV. That's just cranking. It's firing in all cylinders right now.
It's something that Chris would probably be very proud of, to see where it's gone. And he instead of having his weekly news hits, he'd be able to go and do his 30-second spot or 1 minute or 2 minute hits like another great legend Robin Miller used to do for another magazine that exists out there. And he'd be able to do it too. So it shows that you learn very well in that sense from your mentor. And I have, I guess we're doing show and tell here. I'm gonna go and bring this out since we got it. So since we're talking about him, I read about this as part of my senior thesis. Talking about the great Chris Economaki.
Yeah, that was written by one of our Speed Sport columnists and regular writers, Dave Argabright.
Who, if there is a sprint car race or a race on dirt with 4 wheels, you're likely going to see Dave Argabright there, and he'll know everything that's going on. I guess one thing I figure currently, Young Money and his brother-in-law, Brad Sweet, the multi-time World of Outlaws champion, recently announced that they're going to be doing a new weekly sprint car series on Wednesdays. Any news or anything? Have they contacted you or your entities in regards to coverage or any more?
Kyle has a partnership with Flow.
Yeah.
So it's going to all air over there. And that's what it's all about. It's about them getting more subscriptions for Flow. And it's going to be Tuesday. It's going to be a midweek series. So it's going to depend on where they are in the country with the Outlaw schedule. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of politics with it before it's all said and done.
Yeah. That's the thing I was going to ask you, because you've been connected to the sprints for so long, the 410 sprint car game for so long, and you know the big players amongst now three entities that will exist. I mean, you already have the World of Outlaws and All-Star Circuit of Champions and those people that run those and the teams that are willing to do those. And then you have the locals. You have the Pennsylvania Posse. You have the Midwest guys, the ones that are going to run Knoxville. You're going to have the ones that are going to run out in Ohio and run Eldora and all that. Is it too much? I mean, I guess it gets into that whole competition thing. It's kind of like goes in sports with Live Golf versus the PGA Tour. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of the kart and IRL split in many decades ago. Are we spreading ourselves too thin in regards to like 410?
You know, the Outlaws and the All-Stars have always gotten along just fine, and they will continue to do so. And then, I mean, because the Outlaws really run coast to coast, border to border. The All-Stars are a huge regional series, right? They don't go too far west, but they run all over the Northeast and into the Midwest, down into the South. But I really kind of see that as a big regional deal, if you will. Guys don't have to tow too far to run that series. And I think Tony likes keeping it that way. And then you've got all these smaller regions that you got to have the locals running to develop, so that eventually, think of all those local tracks as eventually becoming feeder series into the All-Stars and the Outlaws. A guy's got to go run, whether it's in Pennsylvania or California, Ohio. That's where you build your chops, right? You become good enough that when the Outlaws come through or the All-Stars come through and you beat those guys, now you start developing a name and some following and some sponsorship money comes behind you. And eventually you've got what it takes to go out on the road and follow the Outlaws and try to become a Donnie Schatz. You know, that's what Kyle Larson had to do. Brad Sweet and everybody else. You know, Danny Lasowski, all of them. Schatzy, of course. You got to run strong in those tough regions to build up that reputation. Everybody goes, hey, this guy Brian Brown is really becoming something in Knoxville on a weekly basis. Eventually, he can go out on the Outlaws and maybe run for a championship. And then when you get on the Outlaw Trail, it'll take you another 5 years or so to get it figured out. I talked to Sheldon Hodgkill about this last year at Knoxville, and he said, I'm still a couple of years out from really being able to feel like I've got everything it takes to run for the championship against guys like Brad and Donnie. He said, because they have so much knowledge about all the tracks across the country, all the different types of dirt, different weather conditions, different track conditions. I mean, think of how many different tracks they go to during the course of a year, running almost 100 events a year. It's crazy. And you've got to be on your A-plus game every night with your crew, with yourself. Everything's got to be perfect to beat those guys points-wise over 100 races a year. It's really a remarkable thing to stand on top at the end of the year and say you're the number one guy.
And it kind of speaks to how good Brent Marks was this past weekend to go and win the King's Royal.
But he's a perfect example. Very strong in the Pennsylvania Posse, beating guys like Lance DeWeese and Chad Kemenaugh and, you know, all the top guys in Pennsylvania on a regular basis, winning all over up there. So that then you start venturing out a little bit and you go to something like the King's Royal and you're able to beat the best in the business that given weekend when they're all coming after you. That really says something. And that wakes people up and makes them take notice that eventually this guy's going to be ready to go for the whole thing.
I figure I'll leave you. I know we've had you for about an hour here. I'll let you go. I know you're busy with so many things. I wanted to ask you about a couple of your buddies that you've done many telecasts with. I know Brad Doty's starting to sneak himself out onto Instagram and post a little bit here and there, and he's a legend, and you guys were the broadcast team for World of Outlaws for me when in my prime growing up and listening to the races you talked about. The race where the dude won in Tony's 20 car, his first Knoxville Nationals win, first of I think three, or second of three actually, because he had won for the Beef Packers team. So that was the first for Tony, which has become way more since then. How is the great Brad Doty doing, and also Scott Russell? Because I it always comes up. Like I'll watch old Superbike races, I'll watch old Daytona 200s, and he was the king of the Daytona 200 in my
He was,
mind, and he was
yeah,
great on a Superbike. He went across the pond, won the World Superbike Championship. Gave Carl Fogarty the business, which always makes me happy because he was just always angry about everything. And those two guys, I mean, and like one of the lasting memories for a lot of people was the savage crash that, Scott Russell suffered at the start of the Daytona 200, I think about 20 years ago it was, when he was riding a Ducati. So, how are those guys doing? And I mean, you're in touch with so many people.
yeah.
You're in the pulse. You have the connection. You have the pulse to everybody in racing.
I've been very, very fortunate to work with some amazing, talented guys in the broadcast booth and on different television teams, whether I was sharing the booth with them, like with Brad and Scott or Jeff Emig, or just being a part of a broadcast team with guys like Dave Despain and Bob Varsha, and you mentioned Ken Squire, who's been a legend for so many years, even Chris, so many guys. I mean, I say one guy and I feel bad because I got to say everybody's names because there's so many great ones. Steve Evans, Lord rest his soul, and Big Mac, got to work with him, and Bob Fry and those guys in the NHRA was incredible. I mean, I got to do drag races with Don Perdome and Don Garlitz as my color commentators. It's amazing to think, Snake was an absolute hero to me as a kid. Still is. And to think I got to sit there and broadcast the U.S. Nationals with Don Perdome, that's amazing. That kid that was driving all those hours to Sonoma to announce a motorcycle race was eventually doing the U.S. Nationals with Don Perdome. It's unbelievable. But Doty's doing great. The Brad Doty Classic went really well this year at Attica. It was a great night. They had perfect weather, good car count. So he's very happy. I'll see him in a few weeks in Knoxville. I always look forward to that and talking about old times together. He's one of my best friends. Love Brad Doty. He's as great a guy as you can imagine he is. Chief Russell, you're right. He was a master of Daytona. Everything that Dale Earnhardt Sr. was at Daytona in four wheels, Scott Russell was on two. The Intimidator knew how to work the draft in a car, and Chief knew how to do it on two wheels. Man, that guy was something else. I'll never forget the year he crashed at the start, fell back to like 60th, 62nd, something like that, and came through the field and won it. Unbelievable. 60th place to the win. I mean, just remarkable what that guy could do at that place.
And just to give context to that, the Daytona 200 at that point, back in the 90s, this was when we got World Superbike guys, this is when the Americans dominated motorcycle road racing. So we had the world champion. I'm sorry. I mean, I know you're cutting in and out. We had the world champion in the world Superbikes, and we had the American Superbike champions. So that's number one. Number two, there were as many bikes in the Daytona 200 as there were cars in the Rolex 24 at Daytona. That's essentially what we're talking about. And the Rolex 24, of course, is 24 hours. The Daytona 200 was unique in itself because essentially that was the only Superbike race that a lot of these entities were running with pit stops. That was the longest race they were going to run all year. And you had the AMA Superbike guys versus the World Superbike Championship guys versus teams that were coming that do endurance, the whole bit. It was an all-star race. The King, Kenny Roberts, won this race. All the great riders that went to Grand Prix Glory, many of the great riders that went to Grand Prix Glory had run this race. You have Carl Fogarty, who won multiple World Superbike Championships and ran the Isle of Man, and he ran this race. But Scott Russell was the king. And I watched that video. I'm forgetting what year it is. I'm sorry, I am right now. It's somewhere, I'm thinking 92 or 91 through 93, one of those years, because that was when Scott Russell was in between running here and running the world, and he won the world championship. I feel like he was running for the world championship, or he had won the world championship, crashed in the Daytona 200 early and won. But guy's a freaking beast. And it kind of goes with all those guys that ran those bikes back in the day, right? With Kevin Schwantz, King Kenny,
And it goes
Wayne
back to
Rainey.
exactly what
Yeah.
we were talking about at the very beginning, that every single one of those guys you just mentioned has the exact same mindset as Dale Earnhardt Sr., Tony Stewart, Mario Andretti, AJ Foyt. They all think the same way. It's just different forms of racing, and that's what makes it so exciting and interesting for me.
And it's why we get to listen to you still, and we're grateful that you're able to be the voice for us. You've been a voice for all of us in our lives, and we're looking forward to hearing you for another. You want to do it for another 30 to 60 years. So hopefully we get to listen to you for another 30 to 60 years, because you are one of the greatest ever, and I'm so grateful that you've given us the time. I think we probably need to do like a live, and we need to do a coffee chat or something. Like there has to be like a series that we make out of this. Convince Anthony Wayne to fund it. I think he has a couple of bucks. He just won a Top Fuel race, and he won an SRX race. I think he can dump a couple bucks into it, mainly because of all the merch that I've bought that has Tony Stewart on it. But either way, thank you so much, Ralph. You are an absolute hero and a legend. And God bless to you and your family, and to the rest of the season. I'm looking forward to seeing your work on the American Flat Track Series, and hoping to see some great action over there. And I'm wishing you were on other things, but I'm just glad that you're on that, and we get you on Speed Sport with your columns and everything that you have going on with that.
Well, thank you for having me. And there's a possibility we might have some exciting announcements for you in the coming weeks. Maybe some new things coming down the pipe we'll be a part of. So we look forward to that. And hopefully you'll see me some more on the air here real soon. But thanks for having me, guys. Happy to come on anytime.
Yeah, thank you.
And let us know. Maybe you can announce it here, so then we get some more viewers. And we can go and promote national speed sport news and sprint car and midget. It's Sprint Car Midget magazine, because I get both those emails, but they kind of overlap. So the fact is, I get it in the Speed Sport email, so I know everything that's coming in the other email. So you might want to go and talk to your people on that. But the fact of the matter is, it is the most information you're going to get in regards to dirt, in regards to the grassroots and the great motorsports we have over there. But you're also going to go and get the more mainstream motorsports that you listen to us for the most part here on the Grip Shirt podcast. But this man is an icon. He's a legend. I don't remember what the American Dream said about him. All I remember is Ralph Sheheen. He emphasized your last name, and it always stayed with me. This was when TNN was rebranding themselves, so it was like Monster Jam or something like that. Or Motor Matt, yeah. And this is when ECW went over there, and they had Super Crazy pointing out, and he's like, oh, it's the Nacho Network. And that was when TNN basically went under. Buddy Baker was actually doing ASA, so it tells you how crazy it was, because CBS had lost the NASCAR package. But one thing's for sure, you've worked with so many legends, but you are a legend, and we appreciate your time. Hopefully we can have another opportunity to have you on. We can ask some more questions, maybe pick your brain on some of the stories that you have from sports cars with young Tommy Kendall, because that's another guy that's holding out on me, that maybe we could go and get some dirt on. Maybe I could guilt him into coming on this show.
There you go. Yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime.
All right. Thank you so much, Ralph. So with that, we're going to move on here. There's a great interview with the great Ralph Sheheen, absolute icon of motorsports broadcasting. Somebody that, I mean, I don't know how I'm supposed to do the rest of this show, honestly. That's the thing. You need to do a master class like how Donald Davidson does at IUPUI for all of his history lessons he does. I need to do the lesson. I need to do the lesson of when you interview one of the people you've looked up to your whole life as a fan and as a writer and as a broadcaster and a journalist. How do you go from that and then go and do the rest of your show? Though you could just do it right now. You could just do it live since you're still on. You might as well just go and educate me right now.
Yeah, no, you just got to find a point, turn the page.
How do I turn the page on you though? Like that's the thing. like that's the thing. How do we turn the page on? Like you're dismissing your
drop out on you, but yeah, it's all good. We're good. Turn the page.
It doesn't work that way with you though. That's a thing. Like it didn't even work that way with your buddy Derek. Like that's the thing.
Commercial break, you got to go. You got business.
Well, that's the thing. I don't have a hard out. If I had a hard out, then at least I have something to do. But
well, you just got to make it.
We're keeping that in.
You want me to do it for you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, folks, it's been great being on here with these guys. I've really enjoyed myself. It's a great show. Make sure you tune in every week. They're going to be right here with you. For now, I'm Ralph Sheheen. I've really enjoyed my time on here. I look forward to coming back with these guys soon, but they've got a lot more coming your way. So stay right where you are. They're going to be right back with more. So long, everybody.
Yeah, that's how you do it.
Yeah. There's a reason why he's been doing this for longer than I've been alive. That's why. I didn't know how to get out of that. I was not going to be able to get out of that as long as he's sitting there staring. I'm staring at him. I'm staring at a hero. It's bad. It's really embarrassing. It's the way Tim Kirchin felt when he was looking at Armando, when he was sitting there with Armando at the All-Star game in Miami, and Adnan Virk went and said, because I have the home run derby in my background right now, and Adnan Virk said, "This is your biggest fan," and Armando was wearing white spandex pants, a tank top, and driving gloves, which makes sense since it fits the whole Trackhouse thing. And Ralph brought that up during our show in regards to the Team 91 deal. So, okay, let's go into the race, the big news of the weekend, and part of why Josh or Joe, you're on, and Josh, we talked about this. We're probably going long here. We're going to do another couple hours here, so this is going to be a long one, people. Appreciate it. You're getting an education in broadcasting and motorsports from an absolute motorsports icon. He's been with all of them. For people who don't understand motorsports, Ralph Sheheen's been with all the greats. He's done it all. His hair is still the same color, and it's basically at the same level as it was back when I started watching him in 1993. His wife, I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to get that hardcore. I've joked around with him about it. It's funny. He gets a laugh out of it. Mainly, if I started going in really deep, because Tony's graying and he's fat compared to what he looked like back in the day when he was thin and he had a terrible porn stash and a mullet, kind of like Jeff Gordon. I might get some content out of that because Tony is held out on his boy, which is sacrilege, to be fair, considering all the crap that Tony has. Another guy that Tony probably should have hired, but he didn't. He probably should have hired Kyle Larson, wanted to, but Ford didn't give him the okay. Tyler Reddick, a guy who is one of the best young drivers in this sport, recently coming off of his first win, Josh, at Road America, beating Clyde, the most popular driver in the sport with the personality of a cardboard box, and is harder on himself than most people. I that's the one thing that relates to me to Clyde. I'm very hard on myself, and I take the piss out of myself. I'm very sarcastic, but I also take the piss out of myself to go and, cover up for whatever insecurities or whatever I have. But Clyde's finished first, second, last four races. We're about to get into that. But one of the guys that beat him Tyler Reddick is one of the best talents in NASCAR, and he shook up the sport on Tuesday afternoon when he randomly slid into a Zoom meeting with one Dennis Hamlin and announced that he is going to be a part of 2311 Racing for what we believe would be the replacement to Kurt Busch, but could be the replacement to Denny or to Bubba Wallace. Maybe something happens with Denny where he's able to move over there. Maybe he's replaced Denny Hamlin. Maybe they're going to get another charter. He's going to 2311, and this isn't even happening until the start of 2024. We're a year and a half out. This is like going back to like 2005 era.
Yeah,
when
Kurt Busch, Jamie McMurray, and all that stuff.
Yeah, when that was all going on, when Krusty Wallace and Mark Martin called their retirements. Now, of course, Rusty actually stuck with it. Mark lasted another 86 years. And I think he still wants to drive because he could set up the race. He still remembers his setups from 1975 on his ASA car. So I think he still wants to drive, but he doesn't want to say it. It's the same way some of these other people like Kimi Räikkönen still held on and Fernando Alonso. But initial thoughts on what you thought when you heard it, and now that we've had over a week and a race weekend to go over it, what do you think about the move and all the pieces that are going in? And Joe, I'll throw to you once you can chime in once Josh is done.
Yeah, I mean, first off, for me, it was probably until the IndyCar news later that day last week. That was a pretty significant piece of news, and what a way to do it. Literally, Tyler Reddick joined in on the Zoom meeting and fooled all the media. Well, not really, but surprised everybody. And he was jumped into the meeting with Denny, and then they announced the deal had taken place. And the shocking part of it is the fact that I guess for few years now, we've gotten used to Tyler Reddick being in the number 8 car with our RCR Racing, and we've seen him progress so far in his career. Last year made the playoffs. 2020 had a couple of good runs, and you saw him progress from his Xfinity championships in RCR and at JR Motorsports. And for me, I thought maybe he might be a piece at RCR, as kind of becoming the main guy, even though we all know kind of that Austin Dillon is the kind of the de facto guy over there, that Tyler Reddick's the actual guy who goes out and performs on a mostly week to week basis in the Cup Series. So it was kind of shocking to see that they were going to make the move to go to, or he was going to make the move to go to 2311 in a year and a half from now in the 2024 season. So from that perspective, it was shocking. And then also go back to the fact that earlier this year, Denny Hamlin also had said that they had put their plans on hold to expand beyond 2 cars because they wanted to feel out the current business situation in NASCAR with the TV deal contracts and how money is going to be flowed down to the teams and the drivers and all that stuff with the current economic situation, of course, in America right now is also a little bit unstable. So there's also the fact there that expanding to 3 cars might not be the best time to do it, given all those things. So from that angle as well, that was a bit shocking. And then, going back to what you'd said earlier with Tyler Reddick not joining until a year and a half from now in 2024, well, goes back to that situation with Kurt Busch and Rusty Wallace, and then Jamie McMurray and Mark Martin, and ended up being that Jamie McMurray takes over the 97, Mark stays and unretires, and then Rusty Wallace goes on and Kurt Busch gets released a year from his contract, go drive the 2 car. And then this also kind of brings in Casey Kane's situation also with how he signed for Hendrick in 2012 to take over Mark Martin, but Evernham Motorsports still had him or I guess it was Richard Petty Motorsports in 2010 still had him for another year, but then they released him with about 5 races to go, I think, in the season, I think, and he went on to go to Red Bull for 1 year, where he was basically the guy over there. So yeah, it's definitely a weird situation. We're gonna have to see how this plays out because, yeah, you mentioned earlier with Bubba Wallace, he seemingly was the franchise guy, and I still think he is, but we don't know how committed Denny Hamlin actually is to Bubba beyond next year, and especially since he called Tyler Reddick a franchise driver, and Kurt Busch, who we thought might have been gone after 2021, but then came back and is going to have at least a 2-year stay with the 45 at 2311.
Yeah, so I'll hop in at this point. So first off, Josh, I think everything you said on is spot on. It is great, right? This move is great for Tyler Reddick. This move is horrible for pretty much everyone else, right? So you have Reddick, who really, I mean, to me, he was overdue for a win, right? You look back at a few races where he's been really competitive, not just this year, but even reaching into last year. And even there was 1 or 2 back in 2020, back in his rookie year in Cup, where I thought maybe there was a chance. And so this first win, certainly coming, again, far overdue, much later than I anticipated. I think this is a good move for the longevity of his career, right? I mean, we are seeing a much better Tyler Reddick this year than I think we've seen from the year to year as far as consistency goes. I know even still he hasn't been super consistent, but he's definitely getting there. But as far as Reddick goes, I feel like he is better than the equipment he's in. It's no secret Richard Childress Racing has not been very good for a number of years now. Really, the last year I can think where, man, they seemed like they were really pretty on it was when Newman drove his way to the Final Four in 2014. That's almost a decade ago now, right? They have been in a downward spiral, and they've had highlights, right? Dillon was able to get the win in the 2017 Coke 600, but he did it on fuel strategy, right? He did it leading pretty much just that last lap and a half. He won the Daytona 500, no contest there. Big moment 20 years after Dale Earnhardt did it in that number 3. And then he had the Texas win, and that's pretty much everything that's happened for RCR to me that I think of in the last 8 years, other than getting Reddick. I mean, Reddick was this team's biggest catch. Childress said that Reddick reminded him a lot of Cale Yarborough, that he was going to be a force to be reckoned with. And he was absolutely right. He was spot on. Reddick is a phenomenal driver with just absolutely great talent. And, I was not surprised when Childress had announced that, yes, they had picked up the contract option for 2023. To me, that made perfect sense. I'm thinking, at this point, Reddick's been with Chevrolet for quite a few years now. You go back even past that year that they won the Xfinity Championship, back to his first Xfinity Championship, which came with JRM. That was with Chevrolet as well. So you're talking now, including next year, 6 years with Chevrolet. It's a long time to be with the manufacturer. You just kind of get used to it. So when they dropped the news, I was also pretty shocked in the moment, but the more and more I thought about it, the more and more it makes sense. You have this young, dangerous guy who is, again, he's outgrown the equipment he's in, right? So you have this guy who needs to be in better equipment. He needs to be more competitive because his talent is at that level, far more than what Richard Childress Racing can give him. Because again, let's be honest, Childress, the team, the equipment, it really hasn't gotten much better since 2014. So for Reddick, this is a great move. And for Jordan and Hamlin, it's a great catch, right? It throws the rest of the sport into an absolute whirlwind. I don't remember the last time I saw something like this. And maybe the last time I saw a deal like this was when Boyer, I believe it was in 2016 or 2015, maybe had announced that at the end of the 16 or the start of the 17 season, he would fill in the 14 for Tony Stewart. But these types of deals, they only come up now every once in a while where you're saying, oh, yeah, by the way, it's a year and a half or 2 years away, but this is the plan. It's very rare. And what's funny is I don't remember too well the Boyer situation, but I don't remember it sending in just an absolute spiral out of control, right? You had Childress make their statement on social media that this could not come at a worse time. I think it's probably true for that team. I don't know that I would advertise that if I were the team, but it's definitely true. Think about it. You've just locked yourself into the playoffs. You just committed to being at this team for another year. And now it's probably going to be really awkward, right? So the social dynamic that goes into it can definitely affect Reddick for the next year and a half. And there's a lot that can happen because of this. Maybe there is the possibility that that contract option gets dropped and Reddick's got no home next year. Which, if he does get dropped, I can't imagine, especially now with the seat in the number 42 being open, which we'll touch on in a bit, I'm sure. With seats going to be open, I really can't imagine that he won't have a home next year. Again, just this incredible talent. And I think the move he's making is for the long term of his career. Now, what does it mean in 2311 racing, right? I talked about Richard Childress. They're losing their best driver, point blank. What does it mean for 2311 racing? This is an opportunity for them, right? They have sort of, I think when a lot of people, including myself, when they said, okay, Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, right? And that 3-time Daytona 500 winner and an NBA champion, they're going to make a NASCAR team, right? Michael Jordan is a winner. He likes winning. He breathes winning, right? He smells like winning, or whatever winning smells like, right? He wants winners. A lot like Chip Ganassi. I don't think he's going to keep somebody around if they're not winning, right? And Bubba got a win last year at Talladega. Kurt got a win earlier this year. And when they announced the Reddick situation, I was very much confused because, again, Josh, like you had mentioned, Hamlin had made some comments. They were holding off on their plans and whatnot for the future. And so now we have a driver who's committed for 2024. And we know that both drivers are already committed for 2023 at 2311, that being Kurt Busch and Bubba Wallace. So really, it is a matter of now, again, long term. What happens from here, right? Hamlin's made multiple statements about Kurt Busch. He says so long as Kurt Busch wants a job, he wants him at 2311. I think Hamlin has a tremendous amount of respect for Kurt, and it's very obvious by what he says. But the fact that he's so open that, okay, well, if Kurt wants to be here, he's going to be here, right? To me, that indicates that Kurt's going to go on his own terms. He's going to retire on his own terms. And if he chooses that the end of 2023 is not the time for that, then 2311 either needs to find the money to put into another charter, or we're going to have a driver out of a ride. And it's very funny. I was just writing, I just submitted the article for Fansided about this. So, if you're listening in the future, the article hopefully is already out. Go beyondtheflag.com. But there's a good chance that Bubba, if he doesn't pick it up, he may lose his ride. Now, I know he had a good performance this week, right? But to me, the signs are saying he's in more danger than I think we've previously believed. And it's starting to fall, I don't know, apart together. Something's fallen. The issues he's had with the pit crew and with Booty Barker the past few weeks, they got pretty nasty on the radio at Nashville. It worries me for him. I think he's a great personality to keep around in the sport. I certainly hope that he is able to carry the momentum and maybe find something in the second half of the season. But really, honestly, if he's not able to find anything the second half of the season and 2023, the first half doesn't really go any better, then it really all hinges on what Kurt wants to do, right? It would, because to me, quite honestly, I don't see them expanding the third charter. I think this year, given how crazy last year was with the charters and seeing how many of the prices skyrocketed, I don't think this off season is going to be the year for anybody to buy a charter. I think they're going to take it easy this year, and then 2024 might be another hot year. So I don't really expect 2311 to go after another charter, which to me means somebody's losing their ride. So is Kurt going to give in voluntarily, or is Bubba going to lose his ride? That's the way I see it. I could totally be wrong, but from my perspective and the information I have, that's sort of where this is going for me.
That's the concern I had when I heard the news. The initial takeaway was, Kurt is going to retire, and then, he'll take over the 45. But then my second thought was, well, Kurt still has it, and his relationship with Denny, because theoretically they are of the same, they've came in at the same time, albeit, Kurt came in a few years earlier. It sounds like Kurt wants to be involved, whether it's in a management, ownership, he wants to be involved. He is now single again. Whether that involves, whatever that divorce and how that'll work, to be determined. He's had quite an interesting situation with relationships amongst all the women he's had over his career in NASCAR. But to be fair, one thing that's been consistent with Kurt Busch is his ability to do work in a race car, and these freaking glasses are killing me. So I'm going to adjust them here. I'm going to leave them. So what I'm going to say is, Bubba has to show up. And if he wants to go and continue to keep his ride, I always remember one thing that Bubba said. He's like, you know what? I have this deal and I have a 3-year deal or whatever. I don't know if he said 3 years, but it seems like it's 3 years. So 21, 22, 23. And if after 3 years with this opportunity, with these cars and all this, if I'm not able to make it happen, then I'm going to go and disappear into the sunset. You're never going to hear from me ever again. Or something of those, something like that. And he's getting married to his soulmate at the end of this year in Amanda. I'm sure he wants to have a family. They want to have a family. He is a good race car driver. Is he the best race car driver? Most people would say no. He's a good driver. He has talent. He has proven in NASCAR's Big 3 Series that he can win. He has proven it in the Truck Series. He won 6 races, and he could have won in the Cup or in the Xfinity Series. And he's had opportunities in Cup outside of his one win that he has had, along with, yesterday. The fact of the matter is Tyler Reddick is a talent that's going to be around for a long time, along with the guy that won yesterday. At the end of the day, you just have to figure it's going to get down to a point where they're going to figure out a way. What I personally believe, based on what you guys have been talking about, I think we're going to have an expansion of the field, not because they fill 36 cars, because they fill out more than 36 cars, but because you're screwing people out of making any money. You're keeping the likes of Carl Long, who has a Gen 7 car, Gen 7 car, out of the field. There are the Beard Motorsports team who would probably loan their car out and or make a deal with somebody like Rick Ware or whoever to possibly run a full season charter. You have Rick Ware, who is not a great team, and they've had their moments with one of their cars, but they're not really contenders. The Spire team with the 77 car doesn't run every week, and they suck. The 7 car is basically right on the cusp of the top 30 in points, and there's supposed to be a 3-year deal where if you're out in the bottom 3 teams of the charters, they're supposed to go and decide if you're going to keep that charter, which the 78, the team with BJ McLeod, also falls into that realm as well. So all those things come into play. The other piece, before we move on to New Hampshire, is the fact that RCR right now, it looks like they're basically fucked. And that in turn leads to you guys' favorite driver, Junebug, going and talking about the price of charters being a little bit too high. They're probably going to lose one of their cash cows in Gagson, because he's probably going to go to Maury Gallagher, because that's a Vegas connection. Him and Spencer Gallagher can go and do cocaine and all the other drugs that they all like to do, and that'll get swept under the rug again, and he'll get to drive the 42 car and hit the wall half the year. But RCR needs somebody that is going to be able to run that team and make it happen. Well, you have Dale Jr., Junior Motorsports, the connection to Dale Sr. The fact is, if we're going to say who's a better, more likely scenario to make a Cup team work in this day and age of NASCAR, Dale Jr. and Kelly are more prepared to run a team than whatever Richard Childress and his investors. Josh, I guess I'll throw that to you first. And Joe, I'll let you close out on that before we get into the New Hampshire recap, which involves another young gun that may or may not be worried about his job. But after yesterday, I'm not sure if he really has to worry about his job for a while.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a really interesting aspect there with Dale Jr. potentially acquiring RCR Racing, and kind of brings things into full circle for Junior Motorsports. Because if you remember going all the way back to the original number 88 car when they were originally sponsored by the Navy, if I believe my facts are correct here, and I'm trying to look at that right now on Wikipedia, but the 88 car was, I think, supported by RCR initially rather than DEI when they first made the Junior Motorsports debut with the number 88 car all the way back at the end of 2005. So that's an interesting thing to look at, because now Junior potentially, going out and acquiring RCR Racing brings it full circle, ties it back to his dad. And then also, if right now Junior Motorsports is obviously affiliated with Hendrick, well, does this mean that essentially Hendrick is acquiring RCR, or would they break off the partnership with Hendrick and then go to Childress and basically merge with them and become Junior Motorsports, or Junior or Earnhardt Childress Motorsports or something like that, and potentially go through with that, because there's you have the RCR's engine program, they're supporting other teams in the Xfinity Series, and they're supporting other teams in the Cup Series. Does that change things with the Junior's current relationship with Hendrick, and does Hendrick end up kind of supporting both Junior Motorsports and RCR? It's going to be an interesting thing how this plays out. So yeah, it doesn't lead credence to the fact that this could happen. We'll have to see, but there's still a long way to go to figure out if that's actually going to happen or not.
Yeah, this is weird because, again, it's we're talking about so far in the future. We have a lot of time before we might actually hear anything about this. But here's what I'm sort of thinking, right? We have three possible paths. We have one that's very clear. Nothing happens. Childress is not entertaining the idea that he wants to sell the team or merge the team or nothing. He's in it. Maybe he sells the charter for the number 8 and goes down to a one-car team. But essentially, business-wise, nothing happened. Okay, there's your first option. Second option, they merge, right? Junior Motorsports, Kelly, Dale Jr., meet up with Richard Childress. They say, you know what, let's pool our assets, okay? Maybe we're going to have a 5-car Xfinity team, because remember, with Xfinity, no charters, no team limits, okay? So maybe now they pool their resources. They can have this expanded Xfinity team, and they also carry Cup cars, right? And maybe they try to do it, I think, in that situation, more under the Earnhardt banner rather than the Childress banner, just because I think Earnhardt's, with Dale and Kelly, they're going to continue to be in the sport. Richard Childress, he's old. Love the guy, but he can't do this forever, right? And when does that time come? This may be that moment, realistically. The third option is Junior Motorsports might just buy out Richard Childress, right? This could be the making of a situation very similar to Justin Marks calling up Chip Ganassi and making him an offer that he knew Chip Ganassi could not refuse, right? And even though the team may not be for sale, Chip Ganassi Racing wasn't for sale, according to Chip himself, until that phone call was had. So, the possibilities really are endless. But to me, those are sort of the three more realistic routes that could occur. Now, if Junior Motorsports, because I'm going to be honest, given the affiliation with Hendrick, I struggle to see Junior and Childress merging, because I think at that point you may have to consider cutting the tie with Hendrick, right? And that affects the Xfinity program. That would affect their potential Cup program. That affects a lot, and maybe even to the point of affecting sponsorship. So that's something that's really dangerous. That but listen, Dale and Kelly, they're the business people. They know this stuff much better than myself, an outsider, knows. So they'll know what the right thing to do is for them. But I would imagine it's a really big risk for them to do that. And I'm just not sure that risk is worth it if you're going to try and start a Cup team. I find it more realistic that maybe, Junior has a conversation with RC. They kind of say, we want to continue the name. And maybe in the Cup, maybe they don't even advertise it as JRM. Maybe they advertise it as Dale Jr.'s taking over RCR, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be, okay, well, RCR ceases to exist. It is now JRM. But even still, I would find that more realistic, that they kind of buy out all of the assets, and after that, RC maybe just hangs around the track, but without real ownership or real stake in any properties. It's very strange. It's a very interesting time. Now, one of the other things too, and this may be an option as well. I talk about Childress maybe wanting to sell off one of those charters. He may offer up that charter to Dale Jr., right? He may say, hey, you talk about a discount rate. We're losing a driver. I'm not really sure with sponsors and such, I might be able to replace them. Why don't you give me, instead of the $12 million that charters were going for last year, maybe just, buy it off of me for $8, right? Buy $8 million. Maybe he gives Junior some type of a steal of a deal, right? And Junior gets that one charter that he can fly under the JRM banner to go Cup racing. Now, of course, we're still talking 2024, right? I don't really know how much of this affects the immediate future, 2023. What I will say is I think it would be smart if Dale and Kelly if this is something that they're interested in, if this is a conversation that they want to have with Richard, they may want to pursue it before the end of the 2022 season. Because once 2023 comes around, then everybody's going to start thinking about 2024. We're only going to be a few weeks in, and people are already going to start thinking about 2024 because we know we're going to have movement during that off season. So it would be a really dangerous thing to not have a conversation with Richard before the end of 2022, because that might mean other people are having those conversations. And I think Dale and Kelly, they have an advantage of they've known Richard for a very long time. I mean, hell, Junior's driven for Richard in Xfinity. He won the Wrangler car back in 2010. So you can't say there's no relationship or there's no benefit right now to being Dale Jr. when eyeing up RCR. So I definitely think it's a realistic possibility. Just it's a matter of which route do they want to go, right? Because JRM still has to worry about the immediate future and what do they want to do in 2023? Do they want to still try to acquire a charter, or do they want to run a part-time car meet and then in 2024 try and get a charter and go full-time Cup racing? So a lot of different options, but way too hard to tell.
Yeah, I don't know if the part-time option has any value because we have seen more races here this year with the new car so far, with only 19 races in to the season, 19 or 20 were into where they've only had the chartered cars show up. Not many races where there have been extra cars. With the new business model, with the new car relative to the Gen 6, where they had a different model. I don't think Junior wants to lose money just to go and run limited races. It's something that we have to see. He wants to get in. It sounds like he wants to get in. I think everybody and their mother knows he wants to get in, but he got bumped by Justin Marks and Matt Collig in regards to that race. And for some reason, Rick Ware and the Spire group are still involved. If either of them knew what was good for them, I think Rick Ware is still going to be around. I think Spire's willing to bail at least for one charter. They've had as many as 4. It sounds like I think Rick Ware at 4 or Spire at 3. So you think about it, you've got 1/5 of the charters amongst the bottom 2 entities that are in the Cup Series in regards to teams and their performance. But most of the other teams are super teams or 4-car efforts. The only reason we have 4-car teams is because Hendrick cried wolf about Roush having 5 out of 10 in the chase in 2005. And since 2005, Hendrick Motorsports, for the last 17 years, for the vast majority of the last 17 years, they've been way more dominant of a team than Roush has been. Roush's dominance went away after, I think, about 2006. And they started losing sponsors in the process. So they screwed Roush multiple ways with that. They could fix they could have saved it if Bat Fallon had shut up and just let it happen. He could have went and expanded his team to 5 or 6 teams, gotten Fortune 500 companies involved, or had a satellite effort and made another 4 teams, and this wouldn't have been no problem. He cried wolf, and now there's a 4-car limit. You can't have theoretically direct connections to another team, which in turn screws Dale Jr. because he wants to have Hendrick engines and chassis. But in the Cup Series, it's not as big of a deal. Chevy, I think, essentially has an engine program that's for everybody, and everything else is, the same for everybody else. So we'll see how all that works. Let's get into this weekend's race at New Hampshire. It's a big deal because Christopher Bell won his second career Cup Series race. A Toyota junior driver of sorts, a guy that they've cultivated and raised through the ranks, won a Truck Series championship like Eric Jones, wasn't able to win an Xfinity championship like Eric Jones, took over for Matt Kenseth, who essentially kicked Eric Jones to the curb in a sense. Martin Truex was the guy that kicked Eric Jones to the curb, and then they got rid because they'd already gotten rid of Daniel Suarez. But Christopher Bell is a guy who, with Adam Stevens, a 2-time champion crew chief, is a driver and a crew chief that are trying to prove something. And he went out there yesterday and won the race, won the Ambetter 301 at New Hampshire. I don't know why I brought up the points twice. Wanted to bring up the race results there. It's too quick. All right. So the race results at New Hampshire, it was a Toyota benefit for the most part. Toyotas led the vast majority of the race. I'm trying to see outside of 3 Toyotas, I think everybody else led about 45 laps. So 301 laps in the race, and Toyotas led about 240 or 50 of them, between Martin Truex Jr., who qualified on pole, won both stages, the winner, Christopher Bell, who led the last 42 laps of the race, and Kurt Busch, who led 40 laps in the middle of the race, but wasn't able to take down a stage win in the process. Made a pit stop there, thought it would work out. Didn't have, said on his social media, they haven't had a run that long in a decade. But Christopher Bell gets his second career Cup Series win, Josh. 14th different winner in the 2022 season. 20 races, 14 winners. Christopher Bell essentially locks himself into the playoffs because his points situation is pretty good. We talked about this offline, about the group that's kind of all really close. I'd only have one win. Chris Bell's above that. We also talked about the guys that are outside of the points and outside of the cut line. The 2 guys that are 3rd and 4th in overall points, and the guy who's 9th in points, who is in the cutoff spot. Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr., and Kevin Harvick, to be specific. Truex and Harvick were the 2 best cars yesterday in the race. Strategy didn't work out in their favor. Blaney did not have a good run. But right now, there's a strong possibility that one or all of those guys are going to be out of this playoff if things kind of go the way things are at the moment. But Christopher Bell said, I'm not going to be a part of that conversation, at least for a little bit, with the performance he did, passing Clyde late and pissing him off to go get that victory at New Hampshire.
Yeah, so this shakes things up. It continues to shake things up. Thought maybe it might happen at Road America where we got a 14th winner. Oh, we did get a new winner there with Tyler Reddick, but I thought maybe the last couple of weeks that we would have a lot more new winners. But we, like I said, been saying it since like the beginning of the summer that we're getting onto the stretch of races here in the season where we have a lot of volatility in the series, a lot of new winners, and we're just getting started on that streak. We've got Pocono coming up, Indianapolis, Watkins Glen, Daytona, Richmond, Michigan. So all these racetracks are different on a week-to-week basis up until the start of the playoffs, where could see at least 2 new winners, and does put everybody in a dangerous spot. And certainly right now with only 14 winners, still 2 spots that have left to be claimed. Yeah, there is a strong possibility now that Kevin Harvick doesn't make the playoffs for the NASCAR Cup Series. It's going to be first time he's missed the playoffs in a long time, going back all the way back to probably 2009 is the last time he did not make the playoffs in the Cup Series. So strong possibility there. With that the way Stuart Haas has performed this year, they have not been as dominant like they were in 2020. To argue that they've been probably worse than what they were in 2021. Of course, they had only 2 winners they had Eric Almirola winning last season, and then this year they had Chase Briscoe winning at Phoenix. And Briscoe, even with that win, not doing so hot in the Cup Series as far as his point situation. So there's still a lot of instability there with Stuart Haas Racing. So 14 winners, Chris Bell, who's relatively good on points right now. So if they do get to 16 winners, he probably would be at the top of or closer to the top as far as the group of drivers that still have only 1 win, which there are a lot of here this season. So it's going to be interesting, and definitely going to have to see how it all plays out. And we'll have to see who wins in the next couple of weeks. Does it push out Martin Truex, because he hasn't really been as hot. I think Ryan Blaney at some point is going to win. I could potentially see him winning Michigan, which he won last year, or Daytona. Those are 2 good tracks for him. Maybe Richmond or Pocono, but not sure about the road races for Ryan Blaney. So Truex, maybe Watkins Glen. He's won there in the past.
Pocono too.
Yeah, Pocono as well.
For both of them.
Yeah. So Truex and Blaney, I think, do have good chances. But beyond that, it starts to get harder to see who can win, because it's going to start depending on strategy and luck, or whatever you can make of it. So we'll have to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it does shake things up, and we have the first time we had 14 winners in the Cup Series since 2011, and we're probably going to be on track to go past that number here as we progress throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, and Joe, we get into this. I know you have your spreadsheet. You post it on your socials at Passero Jr. You do this for your website, for your side gig. We're getting into a crazy time in regards to points, and I'm of the ilk that I liked it with 10 drivers. I'm good with 12 drivers, whatever. It's the playoffs. There should be less is more, which means a lot of those 1-win teams would still be screwed, because they'd have to win 2 races, or they'd have to start earning playoff points. But it doesn't take into account the fact that the drivers that are third, who was the best, or fourth, who was fourth in point, who was best driver yesterday, and still doesn't have a race win at New Hampshire in a cup car, which is crazy. And Kevin Harvick, who's 9th in points and right now is on the cutoff, or outside of the cutoff, would be knocked out of the playoffs. And they've run better over the first 20 races. I'm an old school guy. I mean, we had Ralph Sheheen on. He covered racing going all back in the day. I believe in actually being consistent over a whole season and being able to show up every week and do well. The format that BZF came up with is you can shit the bed during the regular season as long as you win a race. Well, you shit the bed and you win a race, it may not guarantee you a way into this playoff. If you've earned enough points and you've done the job, you've been up there every week, you may also not be good enough to get in. I think we're missing the boat here in regards to what it takes to be a playoff driver. When you have guys that have essentially maybe put together 3 or 4 good runs the whole year and are in the playoff. I mean, it goes back to last year when McDowell ran over Brad and Joey and won the Daytona 500 and finished 26th in points, and then was raised up into the playoff, got knocked out in the first round and finished 16th. He's doing better this year than he did last year. He actually looks more like somebody that belongs in a playoff than he did last year. But unless he wins Indianapolis or Daytona, he's not going to get in. It's a crazy dichotomy we have here with the Cup Series, even though they have probably way too many drivers making the playoffs.
Yeah, so points are one of my favorite things to follow. That's part of why I do all the stage point tweets that you had mentioned. I think it's super interesting how the points flow. And this year in particular, what I've noticed, because I've been doing this since I want to say either late 2018 or early 2019 is kind of when I started this thing up. The points this year have been way more volatile throughout the course of the entire year to this point than any other year that I've covered that I can remember. Typically after 13, 14, even 15 races some years, you really don't have a lot of movement. You have, 2 or 3 guys who get close in points and they might move and switch around a few times. But generally speaking, it was almost like you had blocks. You had a block of 5 or 6 drivers, and they kind of separated themselves from the second block, which was made up of another 5 or 6 or 7 drivers, separated, by another gap of points to a third block. You don't really have this year. Nobody, maybe arguably other than the top 3 drivers, has really found any type of consistency. And you look at the gap from driver to driver, and a lot of it is less than, 15 points from the next driver up in points. So you have guys who are swapping, and one bad run for one driver is really all that someone else might need to pass you. Now, that, in addition to the fact that this car lends itself to a very, I don't want to say a super different style of racing, but definitely more passing, a lot of different people up at the front that we don't typically see up at the front this year, as opposed to past years, has led to more winners. And we are now at the point, this is when NASCAR put this playoff system together, this is what they wanted. When NASCAR put Daytona at the end of the regular season, this is what they wanted. They wanted something unpredictable, something with a lot of parity, something that was volatile, because it keeps the viewers engaged, right? We have 14 different winners right now, 2 more winners in the next 6 races, and we have to start talking about the drivers who have won, who will be eliminated from the playoffs. This is an exciting prospect, quite honestly. This has never been talked about before. We've never gotten to the point of we have 14 different winners in the regular season who are in the top 30 in points, who can qualify into the playoffs in a few weeks' time, right? And what's even crazier about that is you have 2 champions, right, of the NASCAR Cup Series, Kevin Harvick and Martin Truex Jr., who are right now on points, no wins, fighting for that last spot. And my heart goes out to Harvick, and I'll tell you why. A few weeks ago, he was about 30 points out. And through Reddick's trouble, because at that point, and this was far before Reddick's win, Reddick had dropped out of the playoffs. Almirola then was in. Harvick got to the bubble. He then passed Almirola. Reddick wins, bumps him out. Harvick gets back in on points and now gets bumped out again. I mean, this week, he had it down to an 11-point gap to Christopher Bell at the end of stage 2. And by Bell winning and solidifying his spot for now, that gap is now back open to 68 points. Harvick has been in and out of the playoffs this year in the regular season more than I remember any other driver going in and out of the playoffs. So we're really getting down to the point of, I don't know if Harvick can point his way in. He probably has to win. And in fact, anybody at this point who's not in with a win is going to have to win, because I know 68 points, you can make most of that up in one race, but that's silly. That's a bad mentality to go into because you're assuming you have a fantastic day and you're assuming that the other driver gets 1 point, right? Because you can make up 59 points in a race, but that's if you execute, you win that race, right? And at that point, you're in the playoffs anyway. So, what happens now? We have 6 races. We have, in my mind, 3 drivers who I'm thinking have a legitimate shot to win who haven't already, being Kevin Harvick. We talked about him good at Pocono. He's shown some strength at Daytona the past few times they've been there. You have Martin Truex Jr. was really good at Atlanta, and quite honestly, he's impressed me a little bit more with his plate racing as of late. And road courses are his strength. I know Toyota hasn't really been there at the road courses this year, but Truex showed up when they were at Road America, did better than most of the day than other Toyotas. And then you've got Ryan Blaney, who is really the only one of those 3 who's been consistent despite his incidents this year. He's had a few incidents the past few weeks, one at Gateway, one this weekend at New Hampshire. He's the only one of those 3 who has found consistency, and he's the closest to the points leader. Why does that matter that he's the closest to the points leader, right? Chase Elliott, right now, 734 points. He has 1 race, 67 points. Back to Ross Chastain. 78 back is Ryan Blaney, right? I know Chase is on this hot streak right now, 1-2, 1-2. And if the pattern continues, might win again this weekend. But if Chase has 2 bad races, which it can happen, we've seen Alex Bowman's on a string of 4. Larson had a string of a few bad races earlier in the spring, and it's not totally unprecedented, right? A string of bad races could mean the downfall of Chase Elliott's hopes for the regular season title. And if Blaney is good, he may not have to win, because if you win the regular season title, you don't have to have a win. The regular season champion will always advance into the playoffs, regardless of winning. Now, I know 78 points is a bit of a stretch, especially with how well Chase has been doing, and really even with how well Ross Chastain has been doing. I know they're closer. They're only 9 points apart, or 11, rather. They're only 11 points apart, but even still, it's been a tough task to get around Chastain, whether you're on the track or whether you're in points. So Blaney, to me, has the best chance of being in the playoffs out of these 3, regardless of what happens with winners. If he doesn't win, he's got still a substantial chance, because he, to me, has a good chance of winning the regular season championship if something happens to Chase Elliott. The dynamic with the points this year is extremely different because, right, we could enter with more than 16 winners, right? Let's say we get those 3 guys, right? That puts you at 17. Bubba could win at Daytona. He's proven it. McDowell could win at the Indy Road Course. He's a good road racer. I mean, hell, Chris Buescher might win one of these races. He's been showing up lately, right? So you could realistically have 6 different winners in the next 6 races. I don't think that'll happen. But then it becomes, okay, a combination of points and wins. Anyone with 2 wins in the top 30 right now, they're good. They're in the playoffs. No worries. Anybody who's got 1 win, they could be in danger in 2 weeks' time. And it's something that it's exciting in some sense, but at the same time, Phil, I think what you spoke to about having, 10 or 12 drivers, more meant less, less meant more. I've been a big proponent of this playoff system. This season is starting to make me rethink that. I love that we're getting a lot of different winners, but when you have guys in the top 10 in points, especially 3rd and 4th with Truex and Blaney, who we're talking about now, they can't be in the playoffs potentially. To me, that's a little bit of an issue. If you're 3rd or 4th in points, you need to be in the playoffs. Even if you haven't won a race, you're probably in better championship contention than the guy who's replacing you in 20th in points, right? So, and I don't want to get too deep into this. This might be a topic for an off-season show, but there may be, I don't know if this is the same way NASCAR is thinking, or if this is the same way they may be thinking after the response from fans comes in after the season. Maybe there does need to be a little bit of a tweaking to this playoff system.
I mean, personally, they had it 8, 10, and 12 for a long time. 8 in trucks, 10 in Xfinity, and 12 in Cup. They had to do the expansion. They had to get Jeff Gordon in as a 13th guy because of, and I'm scratching my shoulder here, because Clint Boyer had to get an itch. He needed to get his
arm
itch.
itch it. Cause caution.
Yep.
Clint Boyer had an itch. Clint Boyer had an itch. Where you'll get to see this on the Grip Strip Podcast YouTube page. So I'm going to go and shill all my stuff since Ralph Sheheen brought up the fact that all the fire extinguishers went off and Kenny Schrader somehow, in his infinite wisdom, thought it was like drinking a 6-pack of Budweiser. The notion of the playoff the way it is, you're watering down the people that are going to be in this playoff. And the fact is you have 10 tracks, I mean, minus Texas, minus Kansas, that could really prove out to be a great champion. And you have drivers, guys who've won. The lowest driver that is in this right now is Denny Hamlin, but he has 2 wins. He needed a win. So once he got his 1 win, okay, fine, he was sort of protected. He got that 2nd win, and now he's covered. He's the worst in regards to points of anybody. But we get into the points. I mean, I'll bring it up here before we move forward. You can go on J-Ski and actually see it. Between Alex Bowman and Chase Briscoe, who's between 9th and 14th in the playoff standings, you have 45 points. It's 45 points in overall points between those 6 drivers. So Bowman, Cindric, Kurt Busch, Suarez, Reddick, Briscoe. And Briscoe, Reddick, Suarez, Cindric all won their first race this year, bringing up the driver point standings just to go and see in regards to the playoff points. We talked about this offline. Bowman is behind all of those guys in regards to playoff points by 1. Kurt Busch, Daniel Suarez, Tyler Reddick, Chase Briscoe all have 7 playoff points. And they're all together in points by 20. Cindric has 6 playoff points along with Alex Bowman, but Cindric somehow or another has moved himself all the way up to 13th in points. I remember a few weeks ago, he was way behind that. So obviously some stuff has happened, but I guess Cindric is figuring it out. I mean, we know he's going to win Rookie of the Year. That happened once he won the Daytona 500, but Cindric is actually 13th in points. He's going to be in a spot where he's going to actually earn himself into this playoff, I think. Is the cutoff based on playoff points if it gets down to that?
No. So let's say we get 17 winners, right? What's going to happen is the driver, because basically at this point it'll be a 1-win driver. The driver that is the farthest down in points with the least number of wins, which would be 1 win in this case, will be eliminated. So right now, that driver is Chase Briscoe in 17. He would be the first bum should we get that 17th winner, assuming that winner is ahead of Briscoe in points, right? Because you could have someone like Brad Keselowski, right? He's 29th in points. Him winning, right? Even if we get past the 16 mark, him winning is going to be inconsequential at that point because he's going to have no one in front of him to bump. Everyone's in front of him.
And he won't have enough playoff points because he lost playoff points in the infraction that he had earlier in the season, which they brought up yesterday. We talk about this race yesterday, but we'll go into the results. Christopher Bell gets the win over Clyde. Bubba Wallace finishes 3rd. Martin Truex from pole comes back to 4th. Kevin Harvick finishes 5th. Denny Hamlin 6th. Brad Keselowski gets his best finish of 2022 in 7th. His best finish as a car owner so far. Other than his win at Daytona and he got into it with Bald Spot Dylan because he didn't like Bald Spot.
Almost
didn't
hooked him
like
in the right rear there.
Bald Spot went and ran into him in the left side, and then Brad showed him how you go and finish people off and destroyed his left side of his car and went into the pits and still had a faster car and came back to 7th. So it tells you all you need to know about the difference of Brad Keselowski and Bald Spot. Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez on an off day for Trackhouse get 8th and 9th. Kurt Busch, who had one of the better cars this weekend, came back to 10th with an alternative pit strategy. You got some of these other people. Byron's won 2 races this year. He finished 11th. Kyle Busch spun out multiple times, still finished 12th. Cindric, 13th. Young Money, the defending series champion, 14th. Chase Briscoe, who we brought up, had a fast car, terrible qualifying run, got up front, was leading, spun out at one point, got all the way back to 15th. AJ Allmendinger proving once again how good Kaulig Racing is. Their 16 car, when he's in it, seemingly is a better car than Justin Haley, who's running the full season, which is kind of crazy. Blaney finished 18th. He hit the wall. Tyler Reddick had a rough race. Dylan hit everything but the lottery and finished 23rd. Joey Logano, pit strategy, led 25 laps, but pit strategy worked against him. Harrison Burton actually led. Well, that might be the first laps he's led in Cup. And Eric Almirola lost a bunch of his gears. The defending race winner was running way better than that. Would have been a good day for him, but finished 31st and lost a lot of ground to try and possibly go and make the playoff there. I wanted to go over, we've been going for a while here. Might have to do 2 episodes at this point. The fact that Bubba comes through with his best finish of the year, 3rd place finish, ran up top 10 most of the race. His pit crew, the swap, the 2 people they swapped to the 20 car last week at Atlanta didn't look so good, got bailed out because of the new rules. Adam Stevens saves his 4-week suspension, and this week they're able to go and get the win, going over the 23 team. Didn't have the best deal at Atlanta, coming off of the spring race where they were up front. But this race might have been Bubba's best performance in Cup. And he did win, of course, at Talladega. Had to make the move, and he made a great move and great defense to win his first career Cup race at Talladega a few months ago. But in regards to his performances in NASCAR, and I'm a Bubba supporter, the way he handled himself yesterday, the way he drove yesterday, they lost a position here and there on pit road, but Darrell did what he had to do. And if he continues that at Pocono, at a track where he's had good, bad, and indifferent moments, but it's a track that Kurt Busch is really good at too. So if they're able to figure something out in practice, who knows? Daytona, of course, we know he's going to be able to do well at. Michigan is a track that Bubba has won at, as well as Kurt Busch. Like, we're talking about this 16 winners thing. That right there, that performance by Bubba Wallace yesterday was something that we needed to see. We're getting into Brad Keselowski is another one. Guy's a freaking champion. He's won over 30 races. He's going in the Hall of Fame, NASCAR Hall of Fame. He has 4 of the 5 guys that have won their first race this year drove for him. So that alone is Hall of Fame worthy, just based on recruitment. But Brad and RFK are starting to turn the corner. The 17 car has been good for the vast majority of the year, but Brad's been off ever since Daytona. But he's starting to figure it out, and he's a champion. I guess I'm going to open it up to the panel here before we move forward and we decide what we're going to do with the rest of this episode, because we've been going on for 2 hours. But the performances of Bubba and Brad, Josh, are something we have to look at, because that hasn't really happened all this year. I mean, I think Bubba's performance, these kind of performances should have happened a long time ago, but whether it's Bubba screwing himself, whether it's Booty effing up, or what's most likely, which is his pit crew shitting the bed, he hasn't been able to show his true potential. And Brad, who knows what it is because it's RFK.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off with Bubba first. I think, Bubba's had, a lot of races where, he gave away a good finish. Go back to the Coke 600. They had a really good car there. They were close to running up front. They led, in fact, one lap, but then they finished 28th place because of miscommunication after a caution, and they got caught with the driver vehicle performance policy and or damage vehicle policy, and were forced by NASCAR to park the car. And it was more or less due to a miscommunication of the team. Remember, they went decided to go half speed or half throttle on like the last stage lap to preserve the tires, and then since it was only 5 laps or so since a caution, or less than 5 laps since a caution came out, they hadn't picked up enough speed to be in touch with the leaders, and so NASCAR parked them for that. And that was a good race car. I remember that race. They had a good car there, and should have finished in the top 10 there. Look at Kansas. They had issues there, and they were well in the top 5 at that race as well, and still managed to come back and finish 10th. Nashville, of course, they had a great car there. And again, they were up into the top 10. They had a good car in practice, didn't have good qualifying effort, but came back to finish 12th. So, those are 3 races right there. And then, of course, go back all the way back to Atlanta. They were coming to the white flag. They were like in 2nd place, and they got taken out in the last lap coming to the line. So there's been a lot of races here where Bubba Wallace, a handful of them could have finished in the top 5. And it seems like when the Toyotas overall are really good, it seems like they have a lot of good pace, and it's gonna be something to look out for here the rest of the way here for the playoffs. As we get closer to that, can the Toyotas consistently be having good pace across the board for all 6 of those cars? And of course, gives better opportunity for Bubba Wallace to be able to go out and potentially sneak his way into the playoffs with the win, potentially at Daytona or otherwise, or possibly Pocono. Remember, he finished last year there in 3rd place off good fuel strategy. So we'll have to see, and it does bode well for his opportunities for the future, as we talked about earlier, with Tyler Reddick potentially taking over his seat should that come to fruition. And then I think with Brad, outside of Daytona, right? Like you said, he hasn't done a whole lot, and of course, he had the points penalty as well, which basically knocked him into the negative as far as having points, and that's kind of what's been bogging him down in the standings. But even with that, still has not had a whole lot of speed this year overall. And I think, New Hampshire, the first place is where they had a lot of good speed throughout the entire race since Daytona. So we'll have to see what happens with Brad Keselowski. I can't see him, making it into the playoffs, but you look at this as a long-term move. The 6 car has not been very good in quite a while, so we'll have to see if he's able to make something of it, and possibly next year they come out as a better team overall. And I think it's probably a better, higher likely chance that we see Chris Buescher, possibly make it into the playoffs than Brad Keselowski.
What do you think about those 2 guys, Joe? And any other takeaways you have before we get into the Xfinity series?
Yeah, so a few takeaways from the Cup race. I guess I'll start towards the front of the field, right? Obviously, not going to go into Bell too much. We already talked about him. His win puts him in the playoffs. I think probably an overdue win, right? I mean, he's been running a lot better than what I think most people have been giving him credit for. And not that people have been discrediting him necessarily, but I also feel like, he's not very much the topic of conversation when he does have good runs. But, he wins, another spot in the playoffs taken for now. Chase Elliott. I know people are probably sick of hearing about Chase Elliott the past few weeks, but you cannot deny the impressive run he's on. First, second, the last 4 races. And arguably, had it not been for him overdriving the car on the last runs of those races could be 4 in a row right now, right? And so long as they can get into the playoffs and he can solve that issue, I think we may see a driver start to pull away, right? We haven't really seen that much this year. Chase is starting to build up a bit of a points gap. Winning the regular season championship at this point for him would put him, I mean, he's not going to separate himself at this point that far unless he wins 2 or 3 races before the end of the regular season. But, to me, he's starting to shape up to be the favorite to possibly go and win this regular season championship, as well as even potentially get to the Final Four and win the championship for 2022. Bubba, I think you have to talk about, right? We were just talking about, and me in particular, I was just talking about, man, he's probably in the most trouble of losing his ride at 23XI Racing come 2 years from now when Reddick comes over. If he can continue to run like this, and granted, you're not going to finish third every week, right? You're not even going to finish top 10 every week. But if he can start to find some more consistency, if he can just hone it in, right? Have a few more top 5s, a few more top 10s, maybe that leads to a win. It's performances like this and becoming consistent with performances like this that's going to allow him to keep his ride at 23XI when Reddick does come over. Like you, Phil, I'm a big supporter. I'd love to see, Bubba do well, but realistically, right, he just needs to carry this momentum forward. We're going to a few tracks where he's shown some strength at in past years. Pocono is going to be an opportunity where he made his first Cup Series start. Daytona is going to be an opportunity. When they go to Talladega in the playoff race, whether or not he's part of the playoffs at that point, that's going to be at least an opportunity to showcase his strength, to possibly go out there and win and upset the playoffs if he's not in it. So you have to look at him right now. As far as some of the other drivers, that really stick out to me after this weekend, Brad finishing 7th. This is the type of run he needed. Now, Brad, unlike Bubba, right? I think Bubba, we're talking maybe, I know he's still far back in points at this rate. Brad, I mean, he's got to win. It's put up or shut up. Even Bubba's got to win, put up or shut up, right? Harvick, there's the argument, put up or shut up, he's got to win. But with Brad, we've known, I think, for a while that he's probably in a winnering situation. When you lose 100 points very early in the season, it's still, you can overcome it. But when you don't perform, then you have to win. So to see that out of his car in particular, I think is a good sign for RFK as a whole, right? We've seen those good runs out of Buescher. Buescher, I think we've talked about maybe at a road course or at Daytona where he won a duel earlier this year. There's a chance he can do some damage and again, shake up the playoff picture. Brad, it's a little harder for me to see do that. And even if I'm not looking at playoffs for Brad, right, which unless it's Daytona, I don't really think I am. But with Brad, if he can take the second half of the season and put the ego aside, put the I'm a NASCAR champion, put the I've been in the playoffs X amount of years, which it seems like he has done. If he can do that and continue to do that and just slowly work at it, I think they can improve RFK to the point by the end of this season where maybe next season we're talking playoff contention for both cars, right? In that case, when you're developing, it's more advantageous to have 2 cars rather than 4, less resources that you need to spread. At this point, though, I think really the biggest takeaway is you need to win to be in the playoffs, right? Harvick, yes, he's maybe the one driver who can go up there, and if Truex and Blaney have 2 or 3 bad races, he can capitalize on it. He's the only one that's got a shot, right? You need to win to be in. Blaney might have the other route. Truex, he's in trouble. But it's going to make these next 6 weeks really interesting to see what happens, especially given the really strange variety of tracks we're hitting, right? You have Pocono, which is a triangle, which is going to have a lot of shifting. You're going to have them road courses at Watkins Glen and Indianapolis, again, more shifting, but I feel like a lot more dynamic situations, right? Pocono, during the runs, it becomes a little stagnant sometimes. It really becomes about fuel more than anything over the long run. Road courses, there's so many more opportunities to make mistakes. And the 2 road courses we're going to in general are just very different from each other, despite the shifting and the right turns. Then you got Daytona, right? As well as Michigan, another fast track, a little bit different. Richmond, right? The very slow track. So 6 very different, for the most part, different tracks that are gonna, that open up for a lot of different possibility. And that I think more than anything is my biggest takeaway from this weekend. You better get your ass in victory lane if you want to be in the playoffs at this point, because if you don't, there's not much hope for you. And I'll bet you Martin Truex and Blaney will back up that statement.
And so would Kevin Harvick, who's on his second longest losing streak of his career. And Rodney Childers is feeling it too, considering that that's Stuart Haas's lead dog. And the first person that would likely get knocked out in a 16-win or a 17th winner scenario would be a Stuart Haas car. So Stuart Haas is on notice. Ford is on notice. They're not in a good place, even with this car. So if Blaney was able to show up here, win at Michigan, win at Pocono, if Martin Truex he wasn't able to win at one of his 86 home tracks last week at New Hampshire, but if he's able to win at another one at Pocono or Watkins Glen, that opens up the deal there. He's won at Richmond multiple times before. That can really make things tough. So points have to be key. You have to earn as many points as you can. I'm starting to think that certain drivers that are in that spot are going to be going for playoff stage points and playoff points instead of maybe going for results, final results. You have 2 road courses coming up, which would lead to that. Richmond, which had the pit stop strategy in the spring race, could lead to that as well. The Xfinity Series race at New Hampshire, the Crayon 200, and it is in Crayola, saw Justin Allgaier get the victory. First win for Chevy at New Hampshire in 10 years, mainly because Joe Gibbs Racing has dominated there. And then if it wasn't Joe Gibbs, it was a Ford of some sort. Justin Allgaier, Trevor Bayne in the 18 car finished second. Brandon Brown finished third. Jeremy Clemens fourth. Sheldon Creed fifth. Ty Dillon, who doesn't have a job after this year, sixth. Austin Hill, Kyle Weatherman driving for No Talent Jesse Iwuji. Mason Massey in the DGM Racing 91 finished ninth. Bailey Curry driving for Johnny Davis Motorsports finished 10th. Now, the reason that took place, I think the result had Landon Castle and Noah Gregson in third and fourth, I believe, in the original result, but both of them failed post-race inspection for ride heights. So they both got DQ'd and sent to the back of the field. So somehow or another, I think they had stage points in both stages. I'm looking at the numbers. 1, 2, 3.
No, the 9 did not have stage points because he got spun out
so
coming to the second one.
Yeah, so both of them didn't have stage points. All right. So, but in the end, Landon Castle was up front for a good part of the race. He was up there, and he got DQ'd, and then so did Gagson. And those are, in Gagson's case, he's locked into the playoffs. It's no big deal. Landon Castle had a career race on Saturday, and that got canceled out because of, the whatever ride heights on the left rear corner or whatever. But it showed that team does have pace. Yet AJ Allmendinger did finish third in both stages. The 11 car didn't have much to show for the day, even though he had stage points. He led early, qualified second, got wrecked. He was in a wreck with Ryan Sieg, Jeb Burton, That was the one where Jeb Burton Arca braked into Ryan Sieg. I'm trying to remember who else is involved in that one. But fact of matter is, Allgaier gets a victory at New Hampshire. Been looking for one there at that racetrack for a while. So big deal for him. He is now only 16 points out of the overall points lead to get 15 playoff points. And he's only 3 points out of the playoff point lead, or with Ty Gibbs, who has 23. So right now, as things stand, Josh, I mean, we know that there's really 6 drivers that are the ones that we have to really look at in regards to this championship. There are going to be 12 drivers that make this playoff, but really there's 6 that we have to look at, and one of those guys is Justin Allgaier, and the only other driver that stood out on Saturday was Ty Gibbs before he had his mechanical issues. Finished second in both stages, led 49 laps at a track that is a Gibbs track. In the end, we're starting to see where this playoff is likely going to be decided. I think it's Junior Motorsports versus Joe Gibbs, and it's essentially 3 against 1 because, I mean, Sam Mayer, for whatever you want to say, he's a rookie. He's only won a couple stages, but he's not really a factor as of yet to really be a championship contender, at least this year. But the other 3 guys, I think, are championship contenders, and Ty Gibbs is probably the only thing that's standing in the way of Junior Motorsports winning an Xfinity championship this year.
Yeah, of course. I think, with this race here, this is a really volatile race overall. I mean, you look at the way the cautions played out, the results, how they played out. Look at who crashed and who didn't crash out of this race. We picked. I think I picked William Byron to win this race, and he had electrical failure on lap 163 and dropped out of the race and had led 22 laps, and he was expected to run up front, and he had run up front up until that point. Brandon Jones crashed out. Anthony Alfredo, who's kind of a mid-pack guy, was eliminated. Riley Herbst, Josh Berry was crashed out. Daniel Hemrick, who tagged Noah Gregson coming to the end of stage 2, ended up being taken out in a crash. So a lot of things happened in this race, results wise, that caused kind of the shift and kind of the weird running order at the end at the top of the top 10, because it led to some different strategies and whatnot, with Brandon Brown, of course, probably the beneficiary there, led some laps on the one of the restarts, then came in and took tires and was able to basically work in his favor, but didn't really have the pace to get up there quite up, to Justin Allgaier's position to be able to challenge. He was able to kind of get up there with Brandon, or with Noah Gregson and Landon Castle, but not really have enough pace to be able to get around both of those guys quickly and get onto Justin Allgaier. I think by that point didn't have enough car and used up his tires and all that. So good result for that team, of course, but kind of explains why they had issues there. You talked about Landon Castle. I think for him, not only is this a career race, this also might be a race, had he been able to win the race or finish in second, it could have been a race that made his career, because right now sponsorship is up in the air. His sponsor, Voyager, of course, one of the crypto companies that went and filed for bankruptcy, so there's a lot of instability there as finding a solid sponsor past this year, and at any point they could end up having to not field him because they don't have enough sponsorship funding to hedge against the crypto sponsorship there. So this race, missed opportunity, of course, and adds on to the fact that he got disqualified. That's a real bummer for him, because if he wants to stay in the Xfinity Series, I think he's probably going to need to win a race and at least stay with a competitive team there. So we'll have to see about that. Trevor Bayne continuing to finish in the top 5 whenever he runs for Joe Gibbs. So still hope for him to be able to make it out in a career, possibly in the Xfinity Series. And then, Justin Allgaier looks like he's probably going to be the odds-on favorite to win the Xfinity title as long as things continue to go this way for him. Because, I think, you talk about 3 versus 1 for the playoffs. I think it's really going to just be Justin Allgaier versus the field when it comes to the playoffs. So we'll have to see about that as we progress later in the season.
Yeah, this is really interesting to me. I don't really get to watch Xfinity anymore too much because a lot of the race times overlap with when I'm going over to the Speedway, New Egypt Speedway, and doing some video work over there. But I try and follow it as much as I can. Justin Allgaier, for as long as I can remember pretty much in Xfinity with JRM, he's pretty much been getting 2 to 3 wins a year, it seems like. And we met that quota a few weeks ago at Nashville. He got that second win. And, I wasn't really sure what was going to happen with that. I think this is a good sign. He missed the Final Four last year. That was a pretty big deal because, pretty much the equivalent of Harvick in Cup, where he's gone so many years and he's always made Final Four. And last year he didn't for the first time. And, for him, I think he's motivated to get back to being in the Final Four, back to being in championship contention. And that's a big deal for him to get this win. I'm pretty much in line with you guys. To me, the championship between this series is going to be decided between JRM, one of 3 drivers over there, being Barry, Gregson, and Allgaier. Sorry, I got distracted.
What's happening? Switching up the screen on us, Phil.
And Ty Gibbs. So, those are really the 4 I'm looking at. Mayer, if he goes on a hot streak the next few weeks and puts up some playoff points, maybe he's got something for him. But really, the way the season's gone, it's going to be between those 4. Now, looking at the next few races here, we're going to Pocono. We're going to Indianapolis, the road course over there. That's actually really cool. Michigan, Watkins Glen, Daytona, Darlington.
This is going to be good on our YouTube feed.
As far as the next track leading up to the playoffs, expect JRM to be pretty strong, but seeing the amount of road courses worries me. That may, shift the momentum back into the hands of Ty Gibbs, where he is very good at road courses. I think he's probably caught some bad luck at a few of the road course races this year that have kept him out of victory lane. But, it's going to, I think, the way that they're running, if they continue to run the way this way, it's going to be between Allgaier and Gibbs. Barry's had some trouble lately, and truthfully, all season, I feel like he's been a little bit of a step behind some of his JRM competitors. And then Gregson, man, I'll tell you, at the start of the season, I totally was thinking championship favorite, man. But past few weeks, right? Points penalty after Road America, after making a real bonehead move of retaliating on a straightaway and dumping one car to get half the field, essentially. And then now this week losing points. I mean, man, I think he's lost like 70-some points in two of the last few races. So that's a lot of trouble, right? Losing that many points in just 2 races. So he's in trouble. They got to clean some stuff up on that 9 car, and maybe by the end of the season, he can be back in championship form. But the way it's shaping up is Allgaier is looking really good for this stretch to the playoffs and into the playoffs.
It's something we have to see. It's been a thing where Allgaier's been in this spot before. He's been in this series on and off for the last 12 years. Or 13 years, really. I think he did about a year or 2 in the Cup Series in between that, but he's been in this spot before, but not able to close. Can he do it this year? They were bringing him up as, we have open rides. There's open rides. Would they go and give Justin Allgaier a shot? I think his talent speaks to the ability to probably compete on Sundays. But does he really want to do that? He's more, and I forget who said it, whether it was Dale Jarrett or whoever it was on the broadcast, are like, well, he's got a family, his one daughter, Harper, is a great softball player. His wife had her birthday this past weekend. He's a Saturday guy. He's like Randy LaJoy. He's like Tommy Houston. He's like those guys that made their name on Saturdays when the Xfinity Series had that kind of thing going on. So we will see what happens with that. I think at the end of the day, Allgaier just wants to be able to win that championship, to go and validate his career. And he's won all these races in this series amongst now 3 teams. He won for Penske. He won for Turner. H. Scott, I guess. Maybe it's 4 because I think he might have still been with H. Scott in the Xfinity Series. And then Junior Motorsports. But definitely 3. So we'll see what happens with that. They're going to Pocono this weekend. I'm going to figure, since we've been on about... what's it work out to be? I think once we started the deal,
We've been on for about 2.5 hours now.
2.5 hours. So I figure we can stop this particular feed, and we would continue with a second episode of sorts within this episode, going over all the other series, and then Pocono preview. And essentially, I mean, if you want to continue on, Joe, you let me know. I don't know if you have work. I know I have work too. So
the only thing is I'm not going to be available the rest of this week. I am slammed until I actually get to the racetrack on Sunday. So what I will say is, if you guys do want to preview Pocono now, I'd be more than happy to. If not, also all good, and I'll be sure to tune into the second show.
Okay, so let's go and take care of that. Since we have a triple header, we'll just make this a whole NASCAR episode, and then Josh and we can go and coordinate for, I don't know, tomorrow or whatever, and we'll finish out this deal for 124.5. Let's go and talk about Pocono. This weekend, the Gen 7 car has never been there. It's a track where you shift, and that's what it was for many years. Then they had the gear rule, and then they weren't shifting. And now, with a 5-speed transmission sequential gearbox, the shifting definitely is back. We finally saw some gearbox issues come up last week at New Hampshire. I think braking issues are going to come up this weekend at Pocono. I'm going to throw to you first, Joe, and then Josh, and then I'll close out. Let's start with the Cup Series. What are we expecting in the M&M's Fan Appreciation 400 at Pocono Raceway? Hopefully I get there. Still working on logistics for that and all. Hopefully I'll be functional enough to get there. But I know you're going to be there. You've been dealing with some stuff, but you're able to get there. So hopefully you'll be able to meet up, get a picture, post it on the show and all that. But what are you expecting on Sunday for the Cup Series at Pocono Raceway, which looks to be a pretty good crowd since most of the grandstands are full?
Yeah, I'm excited for that, because the last few times, and granted it was a while ago, the last few times I was at Pocono, I was in areas where there were seats pretty much almost immediately around me that were unoccupied. It's nice to have the space. It's nicer to have a big crowd. As far as on-track activity, right, I've always compared Pocono to being an oval version of a road course. And what do I mean by that? It shares a lot of the same characteristics, a lot of the same strategies that you see, the short pitting, the reverse strategy, right? The total, I'm going to pit very early and then go the long run that we used to see on road courses is also something that's commonly used at Pocono, has been used at Pocono. Shifting, like you'd mentioned, was a big factor for a while. Gearbox changes led to not so much shifting. This year, there's going to be, I think, an unparalleled amount of shifting that we've seen at Pocono than any other race at any other time that there's ever been a race at NASCAR Pocono because of the 5th gear. Honestly, I'm expecting that they're going to drop from 5th to probably 3rd at maybe one point on the track. and then definitely drop to fourth, probably out of all three corners. What'll be interesting to see is, because this will probably end up being a fuel mileage race, very similar to last year, even though this year's a little bit longer an event. I do expect it to be fuel mileage, so I'm curious, because the broadcasts have not discussed this year very much, despite all the shifting, where there'll be short shifting, right, to try and save fuel. Where you hit the higher gear at a lower RPM because you won't burn as much gas because you're not turning as many RPMs. What are drivers going to do that are in their hands that maybe aren't shifting related, right? Brake problems. We usually see brake problems at this track, so I imagine we will this week. Different brake package, different brake discs in general this week. So again, could be something totally different, but I truthfully expect a lot more of the same. The one thing that concerns me, again, with the shifting, aside from mechanical problems that could arise, is that it seems like the tracks we've been to this year, where we've done a lot of shifting, the performance of the race, the on-track product we've gotten has lacked a little bit. I find that if you look at Jeff Gluck's polls, excluding the one that, somebody bought into recently to try and sway the votes, you throw that one out the window. And it seems like a lot of those races that get polled that are less satisfying to fans have had something to do with less passing, which are tracks where NASCAR has the Cup Series the past few years, they haven't really shifted at. So I don't know if that will play in any this weekend. I think the diffuser cleaning up the air could actually definitely be a benefit this weekend. We'll see how much, if those balance each other out, sort of. As far as drivers and making picks, I got to pick Chase Elliott. I don't know how you can't pick Chase Elliott right now. He's the hottest driver on the circuit. 1-2, 1-2. And if the trend continues, he's going to win this weekend. But on top of that, Hendrick Motorsports at Pocono has been very good over a long period of time now. The past few races they've come, they haven't been so great. Last year, they definitely had a good year. They had 3 of their 4 drivers up at the front at some point during the pair of doubleheader races. And so I got to think that they're preparing that 9 car really good, and that they're going to go to Pocono with a good piece and a good chance to win. We've seen Chase be getting better with this Gen 7 car rather. At the shifting tracks, he struggled a little bit earlier in the year. He's been getting better. So I think that could also play into his hands. Dark horse, I'm going to pick Kevin Harvick, and not for anything other than he needs a win, the way I see it. And I think the way he probably, and Rodney Childers probably sees it too. He needs a win. He's won at Pocono. He's good at Pocono. And they've been bringing better cars to the track the past few weeks. I think just unfortunate circumstances have kept them from really breaking through the playoff bubble. So he's going to be my dark pick this week. I'm hoping it's going to be a better than traditional Pocono race. Sometimes those races get a little bit dry during the long runs, but new car has proven to be pretty good with some of these racetracks where we've seen some dry long runs. So let's hope for more of the same from this next gen car this week.
How about you, Josh? What are you thinking for this weekend at Pocono? The Gen 7 car, they'll be doing their practice and qualifying in between what likely, we're going to talk about the trucks. It'll be the Truck Series regular season finale, which is something we're going to get into just to close this part of the episode. But in between the trucks and Xfinity race, you're going to have practice and qualifying for the Cup Series race, which is part of the reason why the Saturday ticket, honestly, in my humble opinion, is the better ticket, even though everybody's showing up on Sunday. Because you're going to have Truck Series first thing in the morning. You're going to have Cup in the middle of the day. And then you're going to have Xfinity to close the day. And you get to go and hang out and have dinner at the racetrack after the race, because you're going to have to wait out the traffic a little bit. But it won't be as much traffic as you're going to have to wait out on Sunday.
Yeah, well, I think as far as the technicality goes for the racing, you mentioned, Joe, the shifting, short shifting, the long straights, fuel mileage. I think one thing we have to consider is the draft, especially at a track like Pocono, the longest straightaway in NASCAR, and you have also the long pong straightaway, and then the straightaway in between turn 2 and turn 3. So it's going to be interesting how the draft works. We've seen in the past some of the races here at Pocono and NASCAR. The draft came into play at different points of the race when they were close together. It's when IndyCar raced at Pocono it really came into play. I think especially the technique of how they are going to shift is probably going to be similar to how the IndyCars had done their downshifting back in when they were running. So I would expect something from probably fifth to third gear in turn 3 because it's a very flat corner, probably the lowest speed corner of all 3 corners, and then the other 2 corners downshift down into fourth gear. Going into corner entry. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out as far as the racing quality goes. And I do feel like that fuel strategy is probably going to come into play as it has a lot of times in the past. And it's one of my favorite things about Pocono. Even though, it gets long and strung out, the stress of trying to make it on gas towards the end is always a storyline that you have to watch at Pocono. We saw it last year, guys falling out of the race and having to pit at the very end, give up track position to make it. We've seen Kyle Busch in 2015 run out of gas coming to the last lap and having to limp it all the way back around and finish outside the top 10. We've seen crazy finishes like that where guys come to the finish line running out of gas and leads to surprise winners. I think for me, I'm going to go with Ryan Blaney winning this race. He's won here at Pocono in the past, won his first career race in the Cup Series at Pocono. I think he's probably due for a win finally. He's been the best non-winner so far on points, and I think I think this weekend, with the way the racing can play out at Pocono, I definitely think it's gonna go in favor of a guy like Ryan Blaney. Kind of going against the grain, against Hendrick, but I think with the way the Fords sometimes have it played out on these big tracks, possibly could see Ford in victory lane. And to add on, I definitely think the way the racing plays out here at Pocono, 2.5 mile racetrack. Well, California is the only other track that's larger than 2 miles. That's not a super speedway that we haven't that we've been to so far this year. So it's going to be interesting to see if the racing quality is kind of similar to how it was in California. Although, of course, California has the benefit of it being a track that's very, fairly worn out. So it had that in its favor to put the racing quality, whereas Pocono has been repaved since 2012. So you have to kind of consider that. But the fact that it's a lengthy track where allows for long straights, a big draft, especially with these cars, with the way that they designed it to have a lot of drag put into it. So we'll have to see if the all that aerodynamic stuff comes into play. So I'm expecting a race that's can be a lot of passing, but then also it can get strung out and fuel mileage comes into play at the end.
Yeah, for me, in regards to the Cup Series, it's going to be, I think, because of the stages, you've taken away an aspect of what made Pocono so great. You need to have a headset and the radio to go and keep track of all the strategies, but because of the stages, you're going to have people who are going to run to win. And like brought up earlier, you're going to have people that are going to run for those stage points. And when you consider how close that battle is to make the playoffs, it may come down to stage points unless there are more than 16 winners. So there are going to be teams that are willing to sacrifice the overall race result, at least in stage 1, to go and get those stage points versus going and trying to win the race. So that plays a role. Somebody who theoretically wouldn't be affected by that, and a guy who has done well there the last 5 years at Pocono Raceway, or at least the last 10 races at Pocono Raceway, better than anybody active on the circuit, is Kyle Busch. It kind of makes me want to puke, but I think Kyle Busch, it is the M&M's Fan Appreciation 400 after over 30 years of, they said 32 years or something of involvement in the sport. And they've been involved with Kyle Busch since 2008, and that was the most fruitful period of their time involved in NASCAR, of course. Ernie drove for them when they were this Skittles car, number 36 for MB2 Motorsports, and then M&M's came into the fold in 1999, so I always remember that. The only times I ever rooted for Kyle Busch, I think, in my life were the times he drove the Ernie Irvan throwbacks. And of course, the bastard couldn't win in those cars. But I was rooting for Ryan Blaney when he won his first race against Kyle Busch in 2015. I still have pictures because of the Google machine and all that on videos of that celebrating. Also seemingly have pictures of when Martin Truex Jr. did get what was then his third career Cup Series win for Furniture Row Racing at Pocono in 2015. Was it Blaney's was 2016. The day after he was interviewing Brad Keselowski in Victory Lane, because it was the drivers only broadcast that day, and Brad beat Kyle Larson in the Xfinity race. Just connecting it all back. Pocono is just a place that connects to all things in life. It just works out that way. It's part of why I want to go on Sunday, because it's just a spiritual place. It's like how Woodstock is for like boomers, because of the weed and drugs and the sex. Racing and just life works for me at Pocono Raceway. But before I get into the whole reminiscing thing, I picked Kyle Busch. And the guy that was going to win the race last year was Kyle Larson. I'm not saying it as a wild card. I'm just saying because he's not a wild card, he's a defending series champion. It's really crazy to say he is a wild card. But
he also won the big track race this year at California, the other big track race. Which
in turn, that takes away the whole wild card aspect of it. But he's never won at Pocono, and so I can hedge. He hasn't had a great year this year. In his defense, Clyde is kind of taken back over the role of being the lead dog at Hendrick Motorsports. Byron's won 2 races and disappeared. Kind of fits the bill. Bowman has fit the bill of being completely inconsistent and theoretically finding himself out of the playoff. And then Larson has had his spots, but not been as big of a deal. And it'll be a good spot for him. He has a lot of fans up in this area. Ralph talked about it in this episode about the Pennsylvania posse and the sprint car fans up in this area. Kyle Larson's won plenty of races during Pennsylvania Speed Week in his time. So it would be a big win. He blew a tire late in the race last year, hit the wall, led to Alex Bowman getting the victory there. Xfinity Series race at Pocono this weekend will be the Explore the Pocono Mountains 225. You have to go on TobyChristie.com to get the entry list. But essentially, the qualifying, trying to get into the race, there's 39 cars for 38 spots. Cole Custer's is going to make the race. I'm pretty sure he is, because he's a Cup driver. Raja Carutha and Sage Karam are driving for Alpha Prime. Richard is driving for the 48 Big Machine team. Scott Borchetta, that's an interesting call. But, he has experience there, of course. Stephen Parsons will be driving for BJ McLeod. Sammy Smith will be driving the 18. Santino Ferrucci for Sam Hunt Racing. In regards to the points, owner points situation, the 13 car probably has to make it in the show on speed. The 47 definitely has to make it in on speed. Jesse Iwuji is actually trying to make this race. So he has to probably show up and try to make it in on speed. Ronnie Bassett as well is another driver that would have to go and make it in on speed in the 77 car. And then after that, the 08 has points. I think it looks like I'm under the assumption the 08 has points. I thought, or the 07 has points. The 08 is, I thought that was Joe Graff Jr. The 07 is, so the 08 will be somebody else. But let's get into that. I'm going to go and bring up the Toby Christie site because he actually has the entry list for the Xfinity Series race. Yeah. So the 07 is Cole Custer. The 08 is David Starr. And the 08, in regards to the points, it has to also make it in on speed. So Jesse Iwuji actually has a little bit of has a little backing there to go and make it in. The 13 car hasn't run every race either, so that also plays into it. Let's get into the 113. Yeah, it's a 113 to 70. The reason I'm bringing that up is mainly because it's Jesse Iwuji and he sucks. God bless him. He served our country and, he's kept us safe, but he doesn't know how to drive a hot nail through snow. And there's one car that's going to fail to qualify, and it is a tough racetrack. But getting into this weekend's race, Xfinity Series still has a ways to go before they're cut off. Do we see a first-time winner here? It's possible. There's a lot of opportunity in this race, but it could just as easily work out to be a, typical, straightforward race, where you think about road course racing. Josh, I'll go to you first, and Joe, and then myself, before we get into the truck series closeout for their regular season. You have Cole Custer in this race. He has experience, plenty of experience in all three series here. Richard has run plenty of races here as well, running the Big McKine records, 48. Jeremy Clements is driving the Gray Ghost paint scheme this weekend, so doing a throwback. So there's a few things we have to look at. I mean, Clements needs a win to get in. I mean, rooting for Rajah Caruth, of course, personally. Custer, I think, is a favorite, but to be fair, it all comes down to Junior Motorsports versus Keebler, because I don't really know who else is going to do anything, but you could tell me if there's somebody else who's going to do something.
It's going to be tough to say, I think, with the way that Pocono turns out, especially in Xfinity Series. It's not as I feel like the Xfinity Series Pocono races have always been kind of lacking compared to the Cup Series. But I mean, expect again, Ty Gibbs be out front, Justin Allgaier probably up there as well. Then I think beyond that, it's going to be kind of the regulars. You might see some of the back markers or mid-pack guys come out, try something on strategy. Somebody like Anthony Alfredo, who's been known to do strategy stuff. Brandon Brown did strategy last week at New Hampshire to come out with a top 3 finish. Landon Castle, another guy that might be in that group. When his teammate as well, Daniel Hemrick, who's winless after winning the championship last year. Sam Mayer, could be a guy that comes out and picks up a win if fuel mileage works out. Look out for Austin Hill. I mean, he's kind of been up there as well. This is another big track, and it seems like he's the guy that does well on the bigger tracks compared to some of the other racers here in Xfinity. So there's a lot of guys that could make something happen, but I feel like at the end of the day, it's probably going to be a battle of horsepower between the 7 and the 18 here in Xfinity. So we'll have to see, but. And of course, weather could come into play if anything, but because that's another thing that could happen at Pocono. But we'll have to see. But I expect Justin Allgaier versus Ty Gibbs in the Xfinity Series here at Pocono.
Weather looks good. Early returns are Saturday is going to be the better day of the two. So the busy day, the one where you get in for cheap. I'm doing PR for Pocono Raceway, even though we don't have that many people that listen to us, unfortunately. If you want to go, I think Saturday's the day. You're going to have fun. You're going to be there all day waiting for one race, theoretically. On Sunday, that's where you probably could have thrown the ARCA race in randomly, had their whole entire weekend go on early in the morning and into the early part of the day. Instead of having a 3-day show, they could have a 2-day show, because the ARCA series is a clusterfuck, and you could go and have bets, and you can have all kinds of things about who's going to catch on fire, or who's going to be driving at 100 or driving 5 seconds off the pace or 10 seconds off the pace. But for whatever reason, they decide that ARCA shows up on Friday and races in front of 25 fans. But yeah, the Saturday ticket looks good with all the stuff that's going to be going on there, and the Allgaier versus Keebler battle makes a lot of sense. Joe, what are you looking at in regards to Saturday?
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm pretty much on the same page as Josh. You know, given the way that the momentum has been kind of in their favor lately, to me, it sort of indicates that we may get another battle. Now, here's what I will say about this racetrack. Since, you know, I talked about it when I was talking about Cup, this is basically the road course of the oval courses. And for that reason, it does open up a lot of strategy, like you were saying, to new people that we don't see maybe up front. But I think it also opens up favorable conditions for AJ Allmendinger. I don't think we've talked about him being up at the front as much as we have last season, but he's the points leader right now, so he's doing something right. He's consistent. So I think definitely this weekend we may see a little flash of AJ Allmendinger. But I do expect the 7 to 54 to kind of run the show. 16 maybe up there. And Cole Custer, I expect to be up there. Every time Custer's been in that 07 this year, he's been up at the front and been doing well, so it would be unreasonable to think any different this time. And he's clearly got the talent in the Xfinity Series to be running that front. So those are sort of the 4 that I'm looking at. I definitely lean in the direction, same as Josh, where I think if you're going to make a bet, you're going to put it on the 54 or the 7. But if you maybe want some longer odds, then you go 16 or 07. But outside of those 4, I'm really not expecting a whole lot. You know, these, I think, like Josh said, again, these races have been a little bit drier in Xfinity. It doesn't seem like strategy is maybe as big of a factor in these races. They get a little bit more strung out. You know, with Cup, it's exciting because we've never had this car at this track before. Xfinity, we sort of know what to expect.
Yeah, I can go, and I would say that generally speaking, I would go with that. It's going to be later in the day compared to most of the Xfinity races they've had over time at Pocono. It used to be a thing where they didn't have an Xfinity Series race or Busch Series race there until a few years ago. Then they ran it right in the middle of the day. It was a Saturday race. Then they had the doubleheader, and it became a Sunday midday race. This race is going to be on Saturday late afternoon. Maybe that changes things a little bit. They're going to be racing theoretically against darkness, but the weather is in their favor. Might change things up a little bit with track conditions. There aren't that many guys in this field that have ran ARCA at this track during that time of the day. So that could play a role, but we will see. Personally, Chase Briscoe's won at Pocono before. I got to watch Brad win there. So it's a soft spot for me. I love Pocono Raceway. It's the closest track I have, essentially. I honestly think this is, you say 7, I think 754 are the guarantees. Those are the best bets. I feel like this weekend is going to open up to a different winner. I think the person that I would say would go and win, I think Colleague comes through. They've been off this year, and I think a lot of it is because they're committed to Cup. You're trying to go and put all your investment or you're putting a lot of investment into a new car, a new technology, and you're having to commit to 2 cars. And that is taken away from their Xfinity program. Now, to be fair, AJ Allmendinger's won races and he's the points leader for now. He's also benefited from the fact that the likes of Justin Allgaier's had rough spots this year, and Ty Gibbs as well. But there really are 6 drivers that are people that could possibly go and win a championship at the moment. And those are 6 drivers that have won races, and all of them have won at least 2 races. And 3 of them are junior motorsports guys. One of them is a Gibbs driver, and then you have Austin Hill right there on the outside on the periphery. But AJ Allmendinger knows about points racing. He knows about trying to compete. I'm going to pick him to win, and my wild card's going to be Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed has shown speed at this racetrack in a truck before, in an ARCA car before. He showed speed last week at New Hampshire. The corner might have been turned at Road America in regards to him trying to go and make something happen with this season to backdoor his way into the playoff. Sheldon Creed has had a rough year. RCR right now is in a bad spot. It might not be such a bad idea to say, hey, let's put a couple of bucks or a little bit extra effort to get Sheldon over the hump. It's proven to be a good bet wherever else he's been. Robbie Gordon believes in him because he's basically Robbie Gordon 2.0. He proved it in ARCA with time, and then he also proved it in a truck for GMS. And in this Xfinity Championship, the way things are points-wise, this championship wouldn't hurt to have a guy like Sheldon Creed in it. He's only 14th in points, but he is 63 points out of the cutoff at the moment. But he's run every race, so he would be eligible if he does win a race to get in. Right now, in terms of regulars, there's 7 drivers who are regulars that have won a race this year. After that, you have, 2 other drivers that have won. So there's only been 9 drivers this year that have won in 18 races, and 7 of them are regulars. So that's not too crazy. The opportunity is there here as we get towards the end of the regular season to get yourself in with a win. I mean, Sam Mayer is probably the most likely scenario in that, but I'm going to go and pick Sheldon Creed. The Truck Series has their regular season finale. The CRC Brake Clean 150 Saturday afternoon at Pocono Raceway. I think it is Todd Bodine's last race of his career. I'm not entirely certain of that, but I'm just going to say it is because he's running this he was trying to get to 500 races, 500 starts in NASCAR for whatever, just to go and have that record. And he got, what's his name, Marcus Lemonis to sponsor him. He has 241 in the Cup Series. He has 333 in the Xfinity Series and 225. So anyone want to go and add that up real quick while I go and do my bit? Okay, good. That's good. So we'll do the rest of it tomorrow. I think this race on Saturday is his 500 start. If not, it's 499. It sounds like we're close to that. Or 750 or something. Yeah, it's 558. plus 241. Oh, so it's 800 starts. Yeah. So it'd be his 800th NASCAR start. It'll be his 800th NASCAR start amongst the top 3 series. He already, I mean, to be honest, he started in whatever, what is this? It says he started an ARCA Menard Series race at Nashville in 2004, K&N East at Loudon. So he already made his 800 starts, to be honest. And then, modified tour, he actually made a couple of modified starts as well. So, but he'll be making his 800 start, and he'll go back to doing his TV gig. In other news, there's 38 for 36, I believe, in the field. I have to go and confirm that. 38 for 36, 2 will miss the race. Norm Benning is trying to show up and make the show. The Pennsylvania driver, Uncle Norm, he's going to try to make it in on speed. So we have to bring up the owner points as well in that. Caden Honeycutt will be in the 30 truck, taking over for Tate Fogelman, who will be driving a second Rackley War truck. Brian Doza will be showing up with FDNY Racing, trying to make a race there. Rayum Brothers Racing will have Armani Williams in the 43 truck, trying to make the show. So those are some of the other drivers that are non-regulars that'll be trying to make it in. Max Gutierrez driving in the 22 truck. Priest will be in the 17, and Austin Hill will be in the 7. So my pick for this weekend would be Ryan Priest. Right now he's driving, looking for a ride. It's a track he has experience in a cup car. DGR has proven to bring good vehicles, especially with the 17 and to, an extension to 38. Zane Smith, when he starts the race on Saturday, will be the regular season champion and gain 15 playoff points, which will be really crucial to a more than likely championship run and or possible Cup Series ride going into next year. If worst case, he'll probably be in an Xfinity car next year because Ford can't lose him. They've lost so many drivers, they can't lose him. They're lucky they got him. I'm going to pick Ryan Priest. I think having the Austin Hill in that Spire truck, he'll be tough out as well because he's going to be competing for the win. If it was a regular, I would go and say John Hunter Nemechek because he wants to get another win. He only has one win this year. He's won there before. Would help him in regards to playoff points. I know those stage points and playoff points are going to kind of play a little bit of a role in the proceedings. Also, you have to watch out for the guys that are outside of the top 10. Matt Crafton is on the bump, the 3-time series champion. He has a 19-point lead on Derek Kraus. And after that, it's really essentially you need to win. You have guys that are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 drivers that have driven every race this year. All of them would have to win to pass Matt Crafton and get into the playoff. Grant Enfinger essentially needs to score stage points in the first stage, I think, and he would be in on points. So it's really Matt Crafton has to do what Matt Crafton has done for 20-something years, just have a top 10 run, and he'll likely make this playoff. Whether he does anything in this playoff is to be determined since he lost his crew chief. Jeff Hensley left to go to Grant Enfinger's team. and go back to GMS. Joe, what are your thoughts in regards to the Truck Series regular season finale before you throw to Josh?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say that my pick to win this race is going to be Zane Smith. He has tore apart the regular season. I mean, the fact that he's going to go in and simply by taking the green flag be the regular season champion, that is a testament to how good that 38 car truck and that team has been this season. I mean, I think we knew the potential was there with Todd Gilliland, but Zane Smith has brought this team to a whole other level. As far as playoffs go, I'm glad you mentioned that Matt Crafton was in. I'm looking at the points right now, and I'm seeing like, why are Parker Kligerman and Corey Hyman? It's seems to just be a glitch on the site because they're not in. They haven't attempted to start every race. So yeah, right now Grant and Matt Crafton. Now, I will say I think Enfinger, unless something goes really terribly wrong, he should be okay, right? He shouldn't be really in most any sort of danger because he's got 426 points. You got to go back almost 30 points to get back to Matt Crafton. So unless Crafton has a fantastic day, Enfinger probably has to wreck out first or second stage, and that would also require somebody else most likely to win. I mean, he set himself up pretty good. Crafton's a little bit of a different scenario. He can have a bad day and still drop out on points. I'm gonna be honest though, I haven't, we've seen a few okay runs out of Kraus, but he doesn't shine to me as someone who is going to go up there and get after it. I find that he gets himself into a bit of trouble sometimes. And I think that, if anything, maybe his downfall. I think Crafton's probably going to get in all reliable. And I really, honestly, I'm not sure that I see anyone who would be playoff eligible winning their way into the playoffs. I think Priest is a great pick, but not playoff eligible. And quite honestly, I'm not sure with where some of these drivers are at. I don't really see Ankrum winning. Matty D, I know he's got Cup experience there, but Cup experience hasn't seemed to help him anywhere else. Tanner Gray, I mean, just Colby Howard, Timmy. I can't see it. I really can't. So I'm going with Kraft and Enfinger do make the playoffs. Zane Smith gets his 4th win of the year. I mean, he's playing with house money, right? There's no harm with him. He knows he's going to be the regular season champion. So go and get after it.
Yeah, it's a very safe pick there for Zane Smith, of course. Zane Smith, the most dominant driver so far this year in the Truck Series. I think the other safe pick is John Hunter Nemechek. Won this race last year, and this year has not been as great, but still fairly good compared to the rest of the field. Still hanging on to second place in the Truck Series standings. Of course, it seems like the theme this year for Hunter Nemechek is to start fast. He's got 4 poles, average fitness 6.7, average fitness to 12th, so it tells me that he tends to fade at the end of these races. And of course, there's probably some outliers there weighing down that average. But regardless of that fact, it should be an interesting race. This Truck Series race might be the one that has the most cautions per lap compared to the other 2 series in Cup and Xfinity. Likely, due to lack of experience in the field, which should be expected. It is the Truck Series, and a lot of these inexperience does lead to a lot of the incidences and cautions at this level. So expect a lot of that, especially a big track like Pocono. Things can happen, cause a lot of cautions. So we'll see what happens there. I think a name that you have to look out for though is Carson Hocevar. He's been on it throughout the season, off and on. Of course, he's been injured as well, so there's that to factor in. But he's been close so many times. Can he, if he has a good enough car, can he close here at Pocono? Finally pick up his first career win in the Craftsman Trucks or Camping World Truck Series. So we'll have to see how that plays out throughout the weekend if they have the pace to do it. And of course, wild cards. Look out for. I had the entry list here, but look out for guys like I think Matt Benedetto could be a wild card, but I don't think it would be much of a wild card. Chuck Series hasn't been that well for him compared to Cup. Maybe we see Derek Kraus make something out of it here at Pocono. Could happen, win his way to get into the Craftsman, or made this mistake again, but into the Camping World Truck Series. So we'll see what happens.
Lemonis.
Yeah, Marcus Lemonis. Yeah, putting money into the series out somewhere. Not really sure where the money's coming from, because it seems like Camping World just has money that comes out of nowhere. But that's how that works out in the Truck Series. But yeah, I mean, this could be the most interesting race out of the three at the end of the day, depending on how the cautions play out here on Saturday.
We'll see what happens. That's the opener Saturday afternoon. Unfortunately, I'll be working during that, and then I'll probably be hearing it as I go back home. I'll be in the relative vicinity of it. I'll be essentially an hour away from the racetrack, but I'll have to go back home. But either way, it'll be interesting to listen to on Saturday afternoon. Let's finish this episode, since we've been going on for a while, and I think we all have to go to sleep and go to work tomorrow. Josh and I will go and give our plugs later. I know you're busy, Joe, so you can go and give your plugs. Where can we find your work, and where can we find you on socials?
So you can find me on Twitter. That's pretty much where I've been living as far as all my NASCAR goes. I keep referencing my points and my charts and all this because I am a freak about points for some reason. So that's at Passero Jr. at PASSEROJR. You can find me on Twitter there. Been having a lot of fun interactions on Twitter. I know usually I come on and say, respond to me. I'll let's talk, but past few weeks I've had a few really fun interactions. So that's been really cool. If anybody's going to Pocono this weekend, I will definitely be there on Sunday. I was a little concerned at first with some of the things I had going on, but Sunday I'll definitely be there. If I can be super diligent and work very hard this week, I might on Saturday morning have an impulse purchase and be going on Saturday. I don't think it's going to happen, but if anybody sees me on Sunday, come up, say hi, let's talk racing, and that'll be a good time being back at the racetrack, being back at Pocono. My first time since 2017 at that track. You can also, while I'm there at Pocono on Sunday, and this is really the first formal announcement, I guess, I'm making of this. One of the shows I was previously on, I mentioned I'm working on some side projects. One of those is a vlog. Now, this vlog that I'm making, it's going to be called Average Joe's Adventure Show. I have not started the channel yet. I'm going to do that later this week, but it is not just racing related either. There will be racing content, but it is more, I guess, dedicated to my travels and other things that I like to do outside of racing. Racing, though, being such a big part of me, will be a part of it, and I will film a vlog that will appear on that channel at Pocono. So I'm very excited. It's going to be one of my first vlogs. I actually filmed a few recently, but this will be one of the first real big ones that I've done, I feel. So I'm very excited about that. Again, that's Average Joe's Adventure Show. I know it's a long title, but pretty much everything else with my name in it was taken, which is really upsetting. Guess, darn, Joe's such a common name, but find me there. Guys, thank you again so much for having me on. It's always a blast to come on here. And hopefully I get to talk with you more a little bit later in the season, maybe as we get into the playoffs. And hopefully this week goes by and I get everything done. Man, I'd love to go to Pocono on Saturday if I can.
I'm hoping to go to Pocono myself. Hopefully my health supports that and my work. It's been a rough time. I think it would be good for my health, minus the adult beverages I'm probably going to consume if I go there on Sunday. So thanks as always, Joe. Go and follow Joe on the socials there and read his work, see his work. And thank you as always for coming on. We're going to be back for part 2, 124 and a half here tomorrow or whatever, however it'll work when you listen to it. We're going to be back for it again to go and cover everything else. We'll cover IndyCar, big weekend in IndyCar racing. Formula One will be coming up this weekend as well. IndyCar is a double header on an oval in the middle of the day, so people are going to be dying out in the heat, just like I would be dying out in the heat at Pocono on Sunday. There's plenty of racing we have to go over, so tune in for 124.5 as well. Thanks to you, Josh. Thanks to you, Joe. Thanks to all the listeners. Like, subscribe, let people know about this. We have fun doing this. We get great people through whatever it is, just because of passion, whatever, and hero worship, like I have for Ralph Sheheen. And I was able to point out some interesting stuff, which might end up being greater content later on. So thank you for listening to Gripster Podcast. Take care and goodbye.